Okay, call this meeting to order, May 27th, 5:15. Capital planning.
All right, thank you all for being here tonight. We just wanted to start the conversation about what capital planning looks like in the district, what some of the tensions or stress points are for us, some ideas we have on how we might be able to work through or resolve this, or a couple of different things. Maybe it's a blended or a hybrid approach. But we're going to go through the presentation. You've got it in front of you. It's going to be up on the board as well. Quick shout out to Danny and Luciano for putting this together. Luciano's creativity is far beyond a business major's creativity. I said words, and then this came out, and I was very, very happy with it. So I couldn't have asked for any more. So we'll go through it real quick. So the focus right now is just the overcrowding schools in the east. We're aware that our district is growing out east, and maybe the opposite being true in town. We've had a few schools kind of hold steady recently, but enrollment is certainly down, kind of in central to the north end, and so trying to have a conversation, starting the conversation on what it looks like to help resolve that. So on that next slide, this talks a little bit about what our current capacity pressures do at those sites. So we do have class sizes that get a little bit big at our east schools. We do have targeted class sizes. So kinder and first is 25-1, second and third is 28-1, and then fourth and fifth would be 30-1, and then middle school, we try to target the school as a whole 27-1. It's very difficult to keep certain classroom sizes based on electives and rolling schedules and those types of things. It's a little bit different at the elementary level, but those are our targets, and the capacity issues and the growth out there are making it challenging to kind of stay within those class sizes, and so that's something that we're wanting to address. We also do have a growing special ed population. I think in the last 7 years, we've gone from roughly 700 to 1,700 students with special needs. So that creates resource challenges for us as well, but just thinking in terms of our classroom space, we generally staff roughly 10, we'll call it 15 if you want to be super generous. 10's an easier number for me to math out, so I'm going to go with 10. But we try to staff, we generally put 10 kids per classroom in ESS, but if that's a kindergarten classroom or even up to fifth grade, that's 15 to 20 students less than a gen ed classroom. So it also creates some element of pressure on capacity as well. So if you look at some of our schools, you may see that if you're only counting the whites of the eyes or the actual butts in the seats, you might look at the capacity and look at where we're at, and that number's a little bit lower, and that would be the reason why is those ESS classrooms have fewer students in them, because the amount of space that's required or necessary to educate those students, and it's also not fair or appropriate to put 25 or 30 students with special needs in one classroom. The only time you would see that would be in a resource classroom. I think that model is 30.
It's not a classroom. That's pushing.
Okay. But in the other ones, you're somewhere in the 10, 12, 15, like autism, those types of things. Your 15 would be kind of the most we would really want to see. That's a huge challenge. And then staff workload, right? So you get those larger classroom sizes, you get more students running through that school. If you don't have additional staff, it's just more kids going through the cafeteria. We do look at trying to hire more paras. We implemented, was it 2 years ago, para support at the elementary level based on the size of the school. So we do have some additional support there for those schools. But it is an additional workload for those teachers. If you have a classroom of 30 and then your peers on the other side of the district maybe only have 15, 18, 20, there's just a little bit of a disparity in the workload there. So this one, I love this one because this it almost looks like a mirror image. That's kind of how ironic it is, but that's what we're looking at in terms of growth out east, which would be the top half, and then what's happening on the north end, or what we might call the central part of the district. And so this trend is really interesting. So it's from 2021-22 to 24-25. So looking at our 100th day enrollment over the last 3-ish years, this is what you'll see. So, kind of speaks to what we've seen, what we've experienced with growing enrollment out east, and then some decreasing or declining enrollment that we've seen on our north end or the central part of our district. We do know that there's development happening out east, and so that's a challenge. And so this map just kind of shows you a little bit about where those lines are for those schools. When you drive out past Walmart out in the foothills, you see a lot of those houses growing. We do have some housing development or some high density development that's happening in town as well. Behind Burger King and IHOP, there's roughly 250 apartment complex that we anticipate that bringing in some students perhaps at McGraw, Chula Vista. Maybe some of those kids go to OC, maybe they go to Alice Burn. We don't know 100% where they're going to go, but that's another challenge as well. And then there's some apartments going up by 8th Street Liquor, whether it be Avenue A and 8th Street. There's some new apartments going there, so not sure how many students are going to come out of that, but generally high density housing usually leads to probably new families with small kids, those kinds of things. We do see more students come out of those types of areas, so that plays into it as well as we consider what to do with growth throughout our district, or looking at boundary adjustments or any kind of boundary conversations we want to have. So some short-term options that we have. Portable classrooms are always an option. And I just want to clarify, I feel like my role here is to kind of present the options we could come up with, and then we could dialogue about which ones we think are the best or ideal or not. But I just wanted to kind of present you with them. I don't love the idea of portable classrooms, but it is an option. It's something that we can consider, so wanted to put that out there. We could also look at additional classroom square footage, so maybe adding additional square footage to the schools that already exist. Dorothy Hall was built with expansion in mind, so that's already built into the plans. The utilities are already available. They're capped off right now, but all we would have to do is tap into those lines and build according to the plans that have already been designed. And that would probably be one of the cheaper additions that we could come up with right now, just because the utilities are already set up for that. We could renovate or repurpose current space or existing space. So you could think of that maybe like library space. Schools with large libraries, maybe that could become one classroom, maybe that becomes 2 classrooms. We want to evaluate that because we don't want to lose all functionality of a library. We still want to have a library space or an option for kids to go to a library. But again, that is an option that can be considered right now, as the schools are quite crowded out east. So that's another option to consider. And then looking at boundary adjustments, I think this one would be one with maybe a longer term conversation. And then my preference would be to limit the number of boundary changes we have. I think, every boundary change comes with its own challenges. So it would be in a perfect scenario, perfect world, a school gets built out east, we can add square footage, we can dissipate the tension, and then we have one opportunity over a longer period of time to evaluate where everything is and draw lines that are the most appropriate for all the schools once we have a stronger indication of where that enrollment's going to be, what those trends are, what those shifts are going to be. Do one boundary change that will hopefully last us for a while. Ideally, it would be nice that we could add on square footage on the east side with some level of growth in mind, so that it's there for the future too, and not just we built enough classrooms to handle today's problem, but 5 years from now, if it continues to grow, are we in the same situation? So just thinking a little bit ahead, trying to plan ahead a little bit on that. But of course, resources are always a challenge there, whether or not that's something that we can do, but something that, something to consider there. So, all right. So the next slide talks a little bit about what we think we might be able to do to help resolve the issue. So when I sat down and talked some with Luciano and Danny, the original question was, let's assume for a moment no help is on the way, right? No bond, no school, no nothing. What can we do? And so we started thinking about, well, let's look at the capital projects we're currently invested in right now. We buy new school buses every year so we can keep the school bus age down, or we try to keep that as low as we can. I think somewhere in the 15 to 17 year range is our target. We're not there yet, but we're still working towards it. We do have the furniture refresh that we do every year. That's $500,000, $750,000. That's one of the things that we do. And then we also have some other fund balances that we carry. So indirect cost rate fund. So essentially what that is whenever we get grants, we can charge a certain percentage of that to indirect costs, which really offsets the cost that grant costs the district. So our people process the grant and everything that goes with it, so we can claim a little bit of that money back for our own benefit, because to help offset the cost of our employees working that grant. One of the other ones we have is impact aid. So in lieu of property taxes, we do apply for and generally qualify for impact aid each year. And so that would be a bucket of money that we could utilize to help in this scenario. And then we have a program called Medicaid reimbursement. And so for services that we provide to students with special needs, we can apply for reimbursement from the federal government through the MIPS program for that, and that generates revenue for our district as well. And so those are a couple different buckets of money that we can use to pool with our current capital expenditures to try to pull out some amount of money where we think we can start trying to slowly build some classrooms on our own, if that's a direction that we need to go. And so that's something that we've looked at. We set aside $500,000 to $600,000 a year for buses. So we could pause that for a year or two if we need to, in order to set aside that money to build additional classrooms. We could pause the furniture refresh if we needed to, and then look at how much money is in those funds and be able to reallocate those as we need to. So that's kind of the main approach that we were looking at there, is just how do we take the money we have available to us now to help try to alleviate the problem. And then, of course, if a bond were to pass or something like that, then that could expedite the plans, or create a different opportunity for us to solve the problem as well. Any questions on anything so far before we keep going?
The idea of expanding, what does that impact as far as maintenance, M&O, state, SSB?
So if we expand with our own money, then all of the maintenance would be on us. They would not be available for SFB funding. So we would be responsible for maintaining them. Now, usually, the first 5 to 10 years, maintenance should be fairly low. You're going to have additional utility costs, but from a maintenance perspective, most of it should be, cleaning the carpets, cleaning the bathrooms, those kinds of things. But if there were something were to happen that malfunction, that would be kind of a large thing. Let's say that something happens with the roof that insurance didn't cover it or whatever, we'd have to find the funds to cover that, because it wouldn't be covered under the School Facilities Board.
Is there a path to get them covered at some point if enrollment expanded, or are they permanently?
As of right
separated
now,
out?
they're permanently ours. Yeah, they're permanently separated. It's invisible space is the way they calculate it, or the way they call it. And so, yeah, if you don't use the state's funding formula for your space, if they don't deem it appropriate for you to have additional square footage, then anything you build is your responsibility to cover. So Ron Watts is an example of that. Some of that was built with bond funds, so we would be responsible for parts of that.
Mhm.
Dorothy Hall was built with a bond, so we're 100% responsible for anything that happens at Dorothy Hall.
Okay. That was the second question, was how many of these invisible spaces do we have? We have an entire school and a partial school.
Dorothy Hall and a lot of Ron Watson. So the culinary was built with the bond. What else?
The sixth grade wing was built.
Sixth grade wing.
Was built with our money.
Okay, with our money. Okay. There's another one. What else am I? Oh, the Baker Space at Palmcroft, the ESS classroom at Alice Byrne. Those were all built with our money. So we have pieces of it throughout the district that we're responsible for maintaining right now. So some districts solve that with a capital override. So that's one one method to look at, but
Is that an annual override?
it's good for, I want to say it's good for 7, but it ramps down after 5 years. So you get it, you get the override in place for 5, and then it stair steps down over a couple of years. I think that's the time frame. And then at that 5-year period, you could go out and try to get it, try to get it passed again so that you could maintain it for another, 5-7 years. But it's, once you have it, then you have it for, I want to say it's a 7-year period, but I'd have to look to be sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that maxes out at 15%. So you could go 15% above your current capital. So ours is roughly 4 million. So you're looking at $500,000 to help offset
Per year.
the cost. Yeah.
Okay.
And we can always shift M&O. You could go for an M&O override too, and then you could shift some money around to accommodate that. So there are ways to put the puzzle together if you want, but those also are on the taxpayers as well. Those are things that the taxpayers would have to vote to kind of assess themselves. Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So collectively, on all these different funds that we're talking about, what would be the availability of those funds?
I looked at it Friday, talked with Jamie. I think we could comfortably come up with about 2.5 million, which Chris Thompson felt like would build us somewhere between 4 and 5 rooms right now. So we could get about 4 to 5 classrooms.
That's $500,000
Yeah, that's what you get.
Yeah. $500,000 a room.
Are we using local trades for that?
It just kind of depends. We usually, for that, it would probably go through the JOC, and we have 5 local JOC contract. Well, it depends on what you qualify as local. McCarthy has local presence, but they're not maybe a Yuma company.
You have to get a certain amount of bids, you have to do that whole process.
Not if we go through the JOC, because the JOC, the job order contract is what JOC stands for. We already went out to bid and went through that formal process, and so that
So you
gives
have
us
5 options
5
within
different
there.
people
Okay.
that we can choose to work with. And then the board, I want to say in the last 6 months or so, voted to increase that to 2 million from 1 million.
Yeah.
So that gives us a little bit more room to work there. So that's one method that we could look at with utilizing the local companies. So we have to be careful with local. It's technically illegal for us to give local preference. So we just have to be really careful with looking at, all else equal, it makes sense. But we also do have to be like reasonable, good stewards of the money. So if someone from Phoenix can come and do it for
Yeah.
a significantly cheaper amount, then we have to look at that.
Well, that's all it's all about anyway. I mean, I don't see how an out-of-town company could really beat a local company when it comes down to it.
You'd be surprised. I mean, I've seen it. It doesn't happen often, but I've seen it. It just depends on how bad they need work.
Right.
If they'll come down and undercut anybody just to give their guys work. So
Like you
It's
said, if someone
happened,
could
but-
do 7 classrooms and a local can only do 4, I mean, I think as good stewards of money, we need to look at the one that could do 7 classrooms.
Yeah.
I mean, if that would be,
Right.
which I don't think it would be that different, but.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought about all of this, I guess, quite a bit.
Mhm.
I don't know if now is the time to kind of
yeah, fire
chat
away.
through with it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that this is like a hard decision, no matter, and in the HR world, not everyone is not going to be
Mhm.
happy. I've been through a couple of the redistricting, not as a board member, but as a child of someone on the committee, and it's like stressful to those people that are thinking about it. These are our kids, and so it's a tough decision, and it's going to impact students. But for me, I was thinking about like some of the biggest values was like equity and access to quality education. We know the pressure that these teachers are under in the schools. Thinking about an option of like expanding a school, but that makes it harder to manage
Mhm.
holistically as a system. I also worry about like if we add on with like temporary stuff or whatever, there's a cost obviously to that. And then if we get a school out east, then you have some schools that are overbuilt,
Mhm.
so like trying to just weighing that. Thinking about like school choice and preserving a piece of that. I mean, I think that that is something that we really, I think most of our schools have open enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that impact? And when we're talking about retention, which has been a key piece of the board has brought up, even in like the campaigning, is like figure like that's a core piece that we believe in and that we want people to have. And so how does that impact? And I know there's numbers at each school with that. And like long-term planning, which I think you talked about, sustainability, the growth continues to happen out there. And so trying to think what's best district-wide, and that's hard because that may mean that there's going to be some tough decisions to be made, and a bond isn't going to happen overnight,
Right.
and this building isn't going to happen overnight. I do agree that like school is out this week. I feel like from a change management perspective, it's hard to do that now because we haven't given enough time to communicate and go through these options. But I do think we need to make a decision for the following year. I mean, we have to figure out what's going on there, and what would be the best long-term solution, but it may be uncomfortable. It will be uncomfortable, whatever that may be. It might be who's in charge of the bus barn that's here every meeting. He's always here. Like I think about like, oh, sorry, you don't have that budget anymore. Like, and my son getting off the bus, like that bus was hot. I'm like, dang it, but I just think we need to really consider like all things. And that's hard, like hearing from the parents last board member. I know there wasn't a lot of them and we need to listen to them, but it's also like we need to be transparent in the rollout and realize that open enrollment's not just a courtesy, it's a legal requirement. And it's deeply embedded in how our district has functioned. And when we talk about like choice and the importance of that, like this is a piece of that from the public education standpoint. And so I worry about like losing students altogether if we really start to kind of, there's consequences to everything. And to me, what I think we really have to talk about, and it might be the elephant in the room, is like looking at these numbers and that bar graph, like our square footage based on the formula that we have no control over. If we don't have a solution here, we're going to have more physical space than student population in certain parts of town. And so the consequence there is shutting down a school. And so to me, I worry, obviously, like the North End schools is how many students does that impact? And impacting a population that has the highest needs. And so I don't know if we can combat it by just moving some kids from a certain area. Is that really the long-term solution to keeping those schools open? Maybe not. But when I look at the numbers at Pecan Grove, I look at the numbers at Roosevelt, I look at the numbers at even Carver, OC, like Aliceburn, like it's like the writing is on, like we have to figure out holistically, like what are we going to do? And so I don't have a solution, I guess, as I'm finishing all of this, but I think it's more than just like 3 parents that came and talked. Like this is seriously like as a district, we have to figure out what are we going to do about our North End schools, and that's our most needy population. And so whatever we decide now or in the next year is literally going to have impact for decades and decades to come. And so I think as a board member, and everyone that's read about what we're doing here, they're like, oh, I've been on those committees and it's heartbreaking, no matter what the choice is. And so I think that's all, like that was going through my mind, and I was like writing notes about all of it because it's tough.
It is.
But I mean, the idea, like with Dorothy Hall being the newest, like having the infrastructure to be able to build out and seeing the numbers, because it's like at 500 and something, and 558, but then seeing that like Desert Mesa's numbers and Castle Dome, like if there is the space, there is a good population around that area that could maybe expand that boundary a little bit, you know? So, that's kind of where my thoughts are, but like, I would love to like just add some trailers like we used to back in the day, but then just the cost and then the maintenance and again, and then when we build a school out east and now you have this kind of flow again, I don't know.
A little bit on the north end piece, one of the conversations we've had is just trying to think about how to look at the schools, how to maybe revision those schools or repurpose some of them. And so one of the ideas that we've been talking about is looking at Roosevelt and Fourth Avenue being a K-8 school instead of two separate schools, and then having it maybe as some kind of a magnet type of thing. And so looking at an opportunity there, what kind of magnet school would serve that community really well, and kind of revision how those community schools are being utilized in that area to serve those students. So we've tried to think about some ways to that, and so that's one of the things that we've kind of come up with. But I certainly agree that the shift is a challenge, not just in the overcrowded area, but you know the population has matured on the north and the north end
The
schools,
turnover is not
and so
happening of like, you look
they're-
at the population and.
you might get them to trickle in a little bit, but I don't know that.
But
it's
I
gonna
mean, to
boom.
that point, you look at Gowan, which that's a whole nother,
Mhm.
I mean, because my company did the seed money to even
Yeah.
start that place, but how it's evolved there,
Mhm.
and it's in an area of town but because it's a magnet school and because of the focus, people are willing to drive from District 1 to drop their kids off there.
Right.
So I mean, I like that idea, and it's a way to create something unique within the district. But there's such gems like Pecan Grove and Carver, and Carver does a good job being that community strong school. But like, how do we? Yeah, I mean, I think these are the solutions we have to come up with. Like, obviously, it can't happen by August, but what do we start to prepare for so we can consolidate? But also like, whether it be, I mean, they have a great shop program there. I mean, is it a trade? Is it a CTE? Like, I mean, I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, it's
Yep.
like you said, by the formula, it looks like there's a lot more. I mean, we should have more students than we have.
And I think we're stabbing in the dark if we don't fully understand why parents are taking their children in open enrollment to these schools. Is it because they work out there? You know, is it they're not comfortable with the school districts or the school zone that they're in? We need to understand what is driving the parent. Because we can make a magnet school, we can expand schools everywhere, and that it's just going to continue. As soon as parents hear, oh, Castle Dome just opened up 5 more classrooms, well, you're going to have the same number of open enrollment plus, oh, well, they have more room. Now I'm going out there.
Well, the open enrollment for all those schools are capped now, correct?
It's closed right now.
Because people are calling me. So what the issues that people are telling me as a parent of a kid at Gila Vista is, I just got denied at Castle Dome, and I said, my kid's going to Gila Vista. Like, what's your? And these are parents coming to me, and they're like, how did you make that choice as a parent to send your kid to Gila Vista? And I said, what do you mean? And they're like, it's in the ghetto. And I mean, these are real conversations happening.
Yep.
It's in the ghetto. I hear there's nothing but gangbangers there. I mean, these things that are, one, not accurate. So it's narratives. It's the area of town. The type of kids they think go there. They think they're different than the kids that are going to Castle Dome. And this is, people are getting denied right now or in the past couple of months because their kids are about to age. They're going to promote from Dorothy Hall, and they want to go to Castle Dome because they live in our area, which used to be district or zone for Castle Dome. And now they're being told, no more open enrollment. We're at capacity. Your area is Gila Vista.
Right.
And I mean, I'm glad that the ones that are coming to me, because I can give them a different perspective and I can have them, but it's a story that we need to rewrite and we need to tell.
Exactly. And we need to know, I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah.
That's just one piece of the full spectrum of the reasons. And I think one way to find out this information is to ask the parents that are enrolling in these schools outside of their school zone exactly why, with a short we're trying to figure out why parents, we don't want to hear just because it's a new school or, it's nice, but we'd like an honest response, and we're going to read them all and figure out what it is. Because until we know exactly why, because we had a parent stand up there and say, get a temporary building. I'll put my kid in a temporary building. So they're not leaving these schools because they don't have new carpet and fresh paint on the wall. There's something else. And I don't think that it is the school itself. I think what you're saying, the assumption of what's going on in that surrounding area is.
Well, some of the parents from, who did the grandma talk, Sierra Pacific, I took her granddaughter to a tournament this weekend with me, and she starts talking about it, not realizing I might be on the board, this little girl. And she's like, well, my grandma said, well, that she'll just move me to Ron Watson. And I'm like, so to me, what that data is telling me that it actually matters, they think the area versus the school. Because I'm like, if you're being moved from Castle Dome, what's the difference of you going to Ron Watson except for, maybe 5 minutes less than you being bused to Gila Vista?
Yep.
And so I just asked this 12-year-old, why would you rather go to Ron Watson? And then she looks at my daughter who goes to Gila Vista, and then she's like, well, I guess maybe it's not that bad. And I'm like, well, what do you think is bad about it? And she starts saying things, and my daughter is like, well, is there fights at your school? And so to me, this messaging is coming down, and even in that moment of time, they would rather go to Ron Watson than go to Gila Vista. And I'm just like, whoa, and so there is much deeper rooted biases and assumptions that are being made across the board. And this isn't uncommon to just Yuma. And so I think as a district and as a board, and the communications group is doing a great job, but we have to
change the narrative.
Tell the story. Yeah, exactly. And it's hard. But it really, I see it, and it's evident in my child going there. I'm so glad that she's there. But yeah, it's not an easy decision.
It's not, but it is I think we all have that understanding. I think gathering that hard data is a good point, because maybe 80% of it is the perception of the neighborhood. There's another 20% that we can address that might draw 20% of the students back to those schools. With a magnet school, I think it's critical to get feedback and find out what aspect do we need to bring there to make a magnet school, if that's the direction we go. Because we can make the assumption all we want, what we think is good, but without community support,
Well, and involvement, you can build a school for agriculture, but if no one in the area wants to take an ag class, then you know what I mean? We have to obviously sell it a bit
movie,
too.
if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
That is not
I guess
true.
one of the things I saw in the various notes about it was, and I don't know if this was brought up at the meeting, but those that were going to be impacted potentially, they still had the ability to do the open enrollment and then stay. They just weren't going to get transportation.
That's what the policy states, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're currently there, then you could apply to open enroll and stay at the school.
So I guess that,
And once we take them open enrollment, they're ours.
yeah,
So it's not, and they do open enroll for a variety of reasons. Some of
Yeah,
it is the babysitter lives in the neighborhood right there. Some of it is because we have a before and after school program. So if you're a school that has Right at School, they open
Yes.
at 6:30.
And how many actually have Right at School? Raleigh, Dorothy Hall, and who else? There's only 3, right?
So, that is driven by somebody's work schedule. So a lot of them, if they're a nurse or something, where they need to drop off before 7 a.m. So there's a lot of it those are a lot of the reasons that we get from parents when they're trying to open enroll. Either the person that cares for their child after lives in that vicinity, or we have the before and after school program. There's a lot of reasons that they come and do.
Yeah, my kid goes to Right at School because I work until after 5. So there's and my husband works 24 hours. So luckily, Dorothy Hall, my school zone has it, but not all of them do. Yeah, I guess when I saw that, I thought that it was they were going to be moved completely no matter what, but they do have that option. And so I had asked that grandma, does she ride the bus currently? She's like, no, I take her. I'm like, well, then you could if this were to happen, you would be able to have this solution, I guess, if you didn't do the transportation, but.
And that covers probably most of College Acres, maybe some of El Prado. I think Sierra Pacific would probably be hit harder with parents that don't
For
have
sure,
that ability.
that need it, yeah, that's fair.
Several years ago, we did do a survey about magnet school down in the north end, and while parents were kind of excited about, what they would like to see down here, most of them said, but we're not going to drive down here. And not because it's the area, we're just not interested in driving from out at Otondo and bringing our kids into school. Now, that could always change depending on the magnet school and how
Well, the
well it gets
reputation, the
started.
build, yeah.
Once it gets moving, but
Yeah.
like you're saying,
But-
Gowan gets people from everywhere and then
Mhm.
gets
And
them out.
Gowan, remember, started out just as a program.
Mhm.
It was just as part of a school. And it had the gifted kids,
Yeah.
and super talented kids.
And it had money funded
Yeah.
from a different,
Right.
yeah, so it's,
And just kept on growing that way. So that's another way to possibly look at
yeah.
Right.
magnet schools, rather than trying to open up and be all things to all people, or
Mhm.
whatever that magnet is, just
And let
might
that grow.
not simply.
Yeah,
Let that one aspect of it grow into something.
well, and really when they started, they were using half of a current school that didn't have a lot of students, right? They were sharing HLS. So half of the school was Gowan Science and half was HLS, like,
Correct. They were on the
Yeah.
same property.
yeah,
Because these options and expanding is always, that's a short-term solution, but expanding out in the foothills by itself, I don't think is a solution. It's, like I said, as soon as parents find out there's capacity, guess what? They're going out there.
Well, and what are you expanding for? If you're trying to expand the school for general education, you have to build 6 classes.
Right.
Because, right, you have to have a K through 5.
Oh.
Because you just can't build one class and have a bubble go through, because that doesn't
Yeah.
solve anything,
Right.
right?
yeah.
So
that's fair.
then are you building for special ed? Okay, now that might be worth entertaining,
Mhm.
something, because you can put a program there in an area that has increased number.
It's a good point. 2 classrooms doesn't solve the
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so
You've
4
gotta do the full.
classrooms at $2 million, that's not actually giving you a full, like,
That's not giving you a
getting
K-5.
the 30 kid or 20 kids through the,
Right.
Yeah, it's K through 3 expansion, then you gotta kick them out because you have
Right.
nothing after that.
Well, at Dorothy Hall, if you had 4, you'd be all right.
Mhm.
Because I already have 4 classrooms in
Oh, that's right.
kinder.
oh, that's
And I
right.
have 4 classrooms in
So maybe
first.
that would.
So if you add 4 there, then you can.
Where is it plumbed for?
The
Uh,
playground, I think.
The grassy square where the kids,
Uh-huh,
one building is on the plan that way, and then the other one is actually on the plan where all the playground equipment is. Yeah, it's on the actual, like.
I just was thinking
plan
about
where-
like logistics wise, like when or if that ever happens, where you have like a school functioning and then like a full on like addition happening,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
how you have to navigate that with 558 kids,
Mhm.
but
You just
Yeah.
tell them not to go over there.
Yeah.
my
Not
kid
that hard, right?
definitely listens to that.
Just go over the procedures and the protocols at the beginning of every day.
I
part of
mean,
a new
really, we'd have to
program
move
we
the
have,
playground
or we're
equipment to the big field.
Yeah.
And then do the construction right behind there so that you could still have access to the
Yeah.
kids to get out to the big field. But-
I mean,
I mean, it's a possibility, but just like my open enrollment is nobody from in town. So nobody open enrolls from in town out to, it is from other East
Other-
schools.
Okay.
So like we all just kind of, so I have kids that belong to Otondo, Desert Mesa, Raleigh, like none of it is from anything that is in town. So that's pretty typical that like, and there's reasons, right? The babysitter's right here. There's all those different reasons why they are playing around within that same area.
Right.
And then some of it is
People in the
just-
foothills consider foothills their community. People in town consider town to be their community.
So
It's
then-
separated for right now.
They're not open enrolling out into our East schools. Our East schools, open enrollment are our other East schools
East
kids.
schools.
And I don't know what the percentage is of how many from in town are actually commuting out to the foothills, if they don't work out there. And it makes sense if you work in the foothills that you would open and roll out there to take your child because it's not a special trip. But how many are making that special trip to the foothills and back every day before they go to work? I don't think they are. I think a lot of the numbers on that graph that we're seeing are plainly just the neighborhoods turning into 55 plus communities naturally. There's no vitalization in these areas. There's no expansion. There's nothing, these folks. And, what is it going to do in 10 or 15 years, right? As these aging adults need to go and live with their children because they need assisted living, all these houses then are going to become available. They're going to be either bought up and remodeled in new neighborhoods, or just over time attrition, families are going to start moving into them because they're going to be probably the most affordable housing in the county. These older neighborhoods, they're all 900, 1,300 square foot, 3-bedroom homes. They're ideally sized for that, but right now it's the grandparents living in it. But that's not going to stay constant for the next 50 years. I see over the next 15 years, I'm already experiencing it in my business, where the number of winter visitors coming down is dwindling because they're not able to travel. They're becoming more assisted living. I'm seeing more parents looking to put a second house on their property because their kids can't afford a house. These neighborhoods don't afford that, but at some point, they're going to need assisted living in those communities, and are going to start to grow. And then we're going to be back here again in 15 years going, oh my gosh, we have all this empty space out in the foothills, and town is overloaded. But those are the long-term things that we have to look at, because if we completely resolve the issue and shut down a school or close a school in town, and we build out in the foothills, it's going to come full circle, because those houses are going to start to fill up with families again. May not be in 15, it might be 20 years, but what are the odds of getting a school built, another school built in town? So there's a lot of things that have weighed on me, thinking about how do we find the solution is, because there is no clear-cut path.
So for the state to be able to help as far as building a school and saying, okay, Yuma, Arizona qualifies to need a school, all of our schools have to be at capacity, is that right?
At a certain percentage, I think 85%, but I'd have to go back and look for sure. But
so the long-term goal, short-term, to make it a long-term goal, would be to fill the schools that are under capacity now with those schools that are over capacity, which translates bringing the kids from the east into the city. And in doing that, I would think that the ones that really need to be the first to move are those newest subdivisions. Those are the ones that really, we went to those neighborhood meetings. All 3 of those neighborhoods are probably 30 years old or somewhere in that neighborhood. But yet we're telling them, we're going to move you temporarily so that we can go ahead and keep the new subdivisions going to these schools. You can open and enroll, but if we need capacity, you're not going to be able to open and enroll because we're at capacity.
Right.
Also, those neighborhoods are really the poor neighborhoods. So how is mom and dad going to be able to open and enroll their student and drive them to a different school when they can't afford to do that? Those kids, unfortunately, have to go on the bus and go where that bus takes them. So those 3 neighborhoods really were not the right choice, in my opinion. I think that we need to go to the neighborhoods that are current, the newest subdivisions, the ones that are continuing to this day to build houses and people moving in, that also have a longevity of probably another couple of years worth of subdivision growth. The neighborhood that I had talked about was from Araby Road to 8.5E, 32nd Street to County 13.5 is huge growth right now. That would be the neighborhood, at least one neighborhood. You're talking thousands of people that are there that we should be able to move into these inner city schools and fill the voids where we need to, so we can go back to the state and say, okay, we're at capacity now. How long do we have to be at capacity before they say it's okay? Is it 1 year? Is it 3 years?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to do the research on that. I don't know exactly when you hit that number, if you have to maintain for a certain period of time. I'm not sure. Yeah.
But I'm trying to look at the long-term goal.
Sure.
Instead of saying, well, we're going to move these 3 neighborhoods, and we all admitted it's a temporary move, so we're going to move them again. It's not going to fix anything. We're moving what was the total? It was like 300 kids, 200 kids.
Over 200, yeah.
That's not going to be a long-term answer.
Right.
So these new subdivisions, and I know that nobody is going to want to move. We already know that. Anybody gets a letter in their mailbox that says you're up for relocation, you're going to get flack.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is the north end or the east end has to be reallocated. It has to. Because just like Keith said, these neighborhoods are aging out. We have grandmas and grandpas that are living there, and so the neighborhoods are becoming less and less of kids. So we have no choice unless we shut down schools like Pecan Grove, like Carver, and like you were talking about molding Roosevelt and 4th Avenue Junior High together. If we could build the population in those schools using the East population, and they're not going to like it, but nobody's going to like it. It doesn't matter who we talk to. Nobody's going to want to do it. We have to. Make it to where it's a long-term, this is where you're going to go until such a time that we do build a school, with the whole idea that we need to fill these schools up so we can go back to the state and say, okay, we're ready. Maybe when the bond comes around and all these people that we made upset because they had to have their kids move, maybe when that bond comes up to have that school built in their neighborhood, they're going to vote yes, instead of shutting it down and saying we don't want to vote for this bond like they did the last one. So there's another thought process there, that we're making these people do something that nobody wants to do in the first place. It's not a temporary move, it's a more permanent move. And maybe it will help them to make that decision when the time comes for a bond that, yeah, we do need another school. And if I want my kids back in my neighborhood, I'm going to have to vote yes so I can get that neighborhood school built. I wholeheartedly agree. As a project prioritization of the capital projects, ESS could benefit from that. So some of those schools that are in the East that are expanding on the ESS kids, those are the kids that don't need to move at all, in my opinion, because we talked to some of those families at those neighborhood meetings. Those kids just got comfortable. They just got in place. They just got to know their teacher, and now we're going to move them out. And those autistic kids, the Down syndrome kids, these kids that really have problems even getting comfortable in the first place. And now we're going to make a move when we can actually keep them in the same school, and maybe we just need to expand using these project capital funds. I think that would be a way to go, is let's use some of that project capital to expand the ESS classes in those schools, rather than like you had said, trying to do 5 classrooms all at once for one grade level. Let's just do an ESS. If there's any way possible, let's expand Dorothy Hall. If we can do that, that would build up that part of the east side of town, but also bringing in the people because we have to fill the schools to have the state help us, or we have to shut the schools down, is what it's going to boil down to. And I don't want to see the schools close because we have too many overgrowth out in the foothills area that's going to continue to grow. Whether we shut these schools down or not, it's going to overload over there no matter what. We have the facilities, we have the classrooms. Pecan Grove is going dual classrooms, K1, 2, 3, combination classrooms. Well, let's give them the students. Let's fill their classrooms up with some of these easterly kids. I really don't think that we can look at who we're going to make mad. We're going to make everybody mad. It doesn't matter who we give that letter to. They're not going to like it. But it's something that, we all have to agree on, that this is something that has to be done. Like it or not, we have growing pains. Yuma is growing. We don't have the capacity for it. And until we can get the state to kick in, or until we can get a bond to pass to build another school, we need to fill the schools that we have with the overgrowth that's over there. As far as open enrollment, I have no problem with open enrollment. The only thing is, open enrollment is meant when you are not at capacity. And that was another thing that these families were told was, well, you can open enroll, but why are we talking an open enrollment in the same breath that we're saying we're going to move you out? That doesn't make any sense to me, that we're going to take these people that have been in their neighborhood for 30 years, or this 30-year-old neighborhood, and they've been in there, some families have been there 10, 15 years. We're going to move them out for the sake of letting the new subdivisions come in and tell those people that you can open enroll when it's already at capacity in the first place, and we're trying to solve an overcapacity problem. To me, we're running in circles when we do that. So I don't agree with that. I do agree 100% we need open enrollment. But I think first things first, whoever's in those neighborhoods deserve to be in that school first. But that's just kind of my thought process, is that one neighborhood, I looked at it, and I live over by that neighborhood, and it's exploding. And you're right about the other apartments, but I wonder how many kids in those apartments are going to help to be able to grow the schools that are in town. How many of those apartments are going to be from people that are coming from the east to live in those apartments to be able to make that capacity any better? Or is it just somebody that's in one apartment moving up to a newer apartment in the same area that's not really making any difference in population?
Yeah.
Drive time was a thing on the bus that the neighborhoods had talked about. You know, they're like, the buses are hot. You're going to drive us all the way into town. They're making a big thing about it, which I can understand. You know, and especially in the summertime, it is hot in those buses. So I took it upon myself. I drove from the farthest northeast corner of the neighborhood all the way to Palmcroft 4 times back and forth, and I averaged 18 minutes. I think that the drive time that was already on the books is 14 minutes. Taking them, you know, right now, where they're going right now, it's about a 14-minute average, if I remember right in those meetings, that's what that was
I think
said.
so, yeah.
So we're talking a 4-minute difference, which is not that big of a difference.
Mm-hmm.
It was an interstate travel. I don't know if there's a problem with interstate travel versus surface streets,
Mm-hmm.
but interstate travel, I made it back and forth average, and I'm going the speed limit. I wasn't trying to hurry up. I wasn't trying to beat the clock. I was there 18 minutes, a little bit plus, a little bit minus each way,
Okay.
and it really didn't hurt anything. So the travel thing, I'm not buying that when they try to say that, well, it's too far. And then, like you had already made a valid point. I don't know if it was you, Corey, that made that valid point. People are coming from all the way over on the north side of the foothills to come to Gowan
Mm-hmm.
because they got the opportunity. Nobody's complaining about that.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing too is the North
Well,
foothills.
there's people complaining. It's just falls on deaf ears and brain. Like when you're advertising in my area, like this is not your district. Get out of here.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the ones that are actually making the drive. They're the ones.
Well,
that are
yeah,
happy to do
they
it.
want to go to the school that has
They're
the
happy to
grade
do
and
it.
what they hear of it, and
Yeah.
but I mean, my son is at Dorothy Hall, rides a bus. He gets home later than my daughter does from Gila Vista,
Exactly.
and it's 2 miles. So really, it's
Yeah.
the drive situation because because it's
Yeah,
all the stops
I'll
with
tell
a
you,
bunch of
there's
people.
3 bus stops on Laguna Dam Road.
Yep.
And it takes 15 to 20 minutes to get from County 3rd to 95.
And then you got the North foothills that's getting ready to explode. You know, Karen Spencer, she just got that passed through the Yuma County, the rezoning out there. They're going to be building neighborhoods, shopping areas, apartments. The whole north side of the foothills is going to be exploding in the next 15 years. So we're not ready for that as far as schools go. We need to start making a move now. And unfortunately, the move is the east side needs to come into town, whether they like it or not. It's just the way it's going to have to be
I think
until.
we have to consider like to that piece though is like, and this is where I think we need more time and why making the decision now doesn't to me doesn't make sense.
Tonight's not going to be a
is
decision for sure.
we had a small population of families that you guys went and met with and a small population that came here. We have not given the opportunity for the population that you're referring to. Like if you tell Terabella and Tillman and Curly Ranch that lives 1 mile from Dorothy Hall that they're gonna be bussed in, you're gonna have a whole different group. And so I think, but to your point, we need to find out more about the impact. And that may cause even more of a retention issue to District 1 because people do have choice.
Right.
And so I think we don't have enough data to consider all of these things. We had one population and we heard from them loud and clear, which I'm glad. I'm glad that they advocated and that we were like, okay, wow, like let's listen to this. But now we have to figure out before we make another decision as like, well, we're just gonna move all of Ocotillo, which is like hundreds and hundreds of houses. Like we need to afford them the same opportunity of like, what is all of the facts before we just make a rash decision that, like you say, is that, and if there is that.
Ocotillo is what, 25 years old?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we're talking about 2 communities that are almost the same age.
Yeah, correct.
I mean, that area is speckled with old and new communities.
Yeah.
So the, last in, first to go to the new district, that doesn't work because the hopscotching of these subdevelopments, they're old developments next to new developments and things like that.
Well,
But I
don't-
think the direction or what we need to do is, and I'll hear you out, these ideas, get these down to find out. if we have 1 through 4 plans, 5 plans, but I think getting some of the basic information of why, because expanding the foothills, I think, is still only a temporary solution. As soon as you make space, people are gonna go. It's like the developers out there. As soon as
Exactly.
they're allowed to develop someplace, the state gives up a little bit of land, they build a whole nother neighborhood, right? As soon as they get it through on the other side of Foothills Boulevard, they expand, and you're constantly hearing about neighborhoods complaining. But we expand any of those schools out there, it's a temporary solution, because now you're just gonna have more people going out there. The idea, I think, one of the vital aspects of doing is finding out what's gonna draw parents to be willing to take their children in. Forcing them isn't gonna get anywhere because of open enrollment, right? It's a law and we support it. And you tell these folks in these neighborhoods that have the ability to transport their children, now you're going to Carver. They said, no, open enrollment back out here.
As long as
and
they're
it-
not at capacity.
Well, we keep expanding out there as part of the solution is the expansion, then they're just gonna continue. Once they get open enrolled, like I said, now you have them permanently, and they're in the district, right? And so they're just gonna, as you make room, you're gonna get open enrollment, and they're gonna stay there. And I suspect that what we're gonna see in town is, we're not gonna see much of an influx. We're not gonna see as big of an impact as we are if we push those boundaries this way and expand at the same time.
I think we're agreeing on the same thing that, I'm not saying to expand all the schools. I'm saying that there is and we've just admitted that, we have a need to expand the ESS.
Yeah.
We want to expand the ESS without moving those kids. So that's where I say that we should use some of these funds, we should look into that about keeping those kids in the school that they're at and expanding those as much as we can for the ESS cause, nothing more. Dorothy Hall, that neighborhood's still moving, that around you. It's gonna be, you're already at capacity, right? So we need to expand Dorothy Hall just for the sake of the neighborhood. I'm not saying the foothills, I'm not saying the north end, north of foothills or any of that. I'm talking about Dorothy Hall, Ocotillo neighborhood.
Mhm.
The other neighborhoods, and I don't wanna get into the weeds of, well, Tillman Estates is it has more money, so they're gonna choose open enrollment rather than, taking our recommendation over Trail Estates. It's a neighborhood, period. I don't care what your social status is, your economic status is. We need to pick the neighborhood. It doesn't matter how rich they are, how poor they are. The neighborhood has to move. And until we can get the means to be able to build another school in that area, we need to, I don't think we should be picking and choosing based on social status. Like, well, Tillman Estates
is
might
a
not.
neighborhood school. I mean, Tillman is right next door to Dorothy Hall. So maybe you're referring to ones that are newer out in the foothills,
Sierra,
maybe?
Montana then?
Maybe, yeah. I
Okay,
don't
let's talk,
know
any of those more
Yeah, that are
Well, you
newer.
said Araby, right? Did you say Araby?
from Araby
Yeah, from
Road
Araby.
down to
beyond,
8.5.
Because,
yeah.
Derby
yeah,
Crossing.
Yeah.
Dorothy Hall's
Right.
before.
But where are they? That's Desert Mesa right now,
Yes.
right?
That is
Yeah,
Desert
one-
Mesa.
One
And
side is
there's
Desert
an
Mesa, the
island
other
that
side
goes
is
to Raleigh.
Otondo. Raleigh? No,
Raleigh.
Otondo.
No, it's
But
goes
all
to
of them
Raleigh.
are Gila
There's
Vista,
an island
right?
out there from 80 to 90 that goes to Raleigh.
And maybe the
Right.
Gila Vista kids can stay Gila Vista, but
Well,
I'm
right now,
talking
I
about-
think Desert Mesa and all them Day and Happy, they're getting bussed into Gila Vista because they already had to make that tough decision
Yeah,
years
Right.
back.
I'm just trying to fill up the
Yeah.
schools. My mentality is that we need to fill up the schools that are suffering, that needs the capacity. And I don't think the Fourth Avenue, Gila Vista, I don't think they need to be moved. I think that you guys are still doing pretty good on your numbers, right?
I don't know what the total
So,
amount is, but I
on
think
On
it's
the
like
junior
500.
high, on the junior high level, maybe that bus keeps them going to Gila Vista. But on the grade school level, those kids are at capacity, over capacity. Those are the kids that need to maybe
Well,
come into town.
We may want to go back and look at data from when Gwinnett-Ham closed.
Mm.
Because when Gwinnett-Ham closed, I worked at McGraw. So we were anticipated to get 250 of those kids. There was even an assistant principal that was hired. And we didn't retain even half of those kids. And that was literally like across.
Oh,
the
yeah, I can
board.
throw a rock from
Right.
Yeah.
where I
Oh,
live.
So
I remember
that
close.
wasn't even closing a bar
Where
and sending
do
them.
you think they went? So I mean, do they open a road to Raleigh or do they?
Part of
Desert View
them,
was
but I
in
think
some
part of it
project too, I
is,
think.
a lot of them,
Yeah.
if they're going to be, if they don't get to go to their neighborhood school where their brother or sister, then when they're forced to make that change, then they'll look at all the options. So I think sometimes that's what we need to consider is how many kids did we lose
Yeah,
that belong to our own district when we closed
yeah,
Gwinnett?
that's a good point.
I think we should go back, because that's not that far
Did
back.
they stay within district?
No, we
No,
lost a lot out
we
there.
lost.
They actually
Wow.
went to Crane?
they went
Charter
a
schools.
variety of
Church,
places.
yeah.
I think Desert View had just maybe started at
The
that
big
church on
giant one,
24th
yeah.
and Kennedy.
And then
Well, you have
Harvest.
Ameris Schools, Harvest Prep, they're all in that that area.
So we,
But that was my
we
piece about
lost
retention.
enrollment from
Yeah.
district, period. So we don't want to then impact in an even more negative way to
Yeah,
lose our
yeah.
own kids and then have even less money to
Right.
serve, like, so.
Correct.
If we
I
had our
think we
wishes.
should go back and look at that historical
Yeah,
data,
I
like,
like that.
how many kids were enrolled in Gwinnett-Ham? And then when that closed, they were
Okay.
split, a portion went to Raleigh, and majority of them were supposed to go to McGraw. And that assistant principal, we did not garner those numbers in the first 10 days of school, and that assistant principal got moved to Hilo Vista
Oh, wow.
because we did not have the enrollment to meet that criteria.
Right.
So
And-
we lost those kids, period.
Wow.
And the other aspect, other thing we need to look at is if we are successful at being able to build another school, if we are not drawing students into the schools where they need to be to stabilize enrollment, once you build another school, it's going to create a vacuum. It's going to draw, right? And so that's something else to consider. Is it goes back to we have to either change through marketing, through advertising, through whatever we can, and finding out why parents aren't wanting to go to these inner city schools. I don't even know if we can really call them inner cities, are we inner city? But these schools, we have to change that narrative. We have to change that stigma of these schools, because I don't believe that the education going on there is any less. To make it so that the parents want to take their kids, and even if a new school opened up 2 miles down the street, like, you know what, that's nice, but this is where I want to go. If they're holding on to that school just long enough until something else, a better option opens up, a better option is going to open up, and we will lose them either out of the district completely or to another one of our schools and recreate the problem right after we build a new school. The only way to stop that is to make it so the parents say, you know what, that's where I want to take my kid. I want to take him to Carver.
They need to see the
Why not?
pluses that are in these jewel schools.
Yes.
You know, I've done school visits on all those schools, Pecan Grove and Carver and Roosevelt, and they have a good program going on. When we were in those neighborhood meetings, there was a couple of parents that were, you know, talking statistics that those schools they're ranked the lowest, and that's why they don't want their kids going there. I would say that probably some of that answer to the reason why maybe it is ranking lower than the other schools is because the children that live in that part of town, the majority of them are Spanish speaking first.
Mhm.
And they're being taught in English. And if you can't understand what you're being taught by the language barrier, how do you expect anybody to succeed? And how do you expect the proficiency ratings to be up where they should be? It's not the teachers. I don't think that's the problem. It's not the lesson plans that's a problem, because they're doing it across the board. They're all using the same math. They're all using the same English for the most part. I think it's just the language barrier, number one. And I've actually talked to a couple of principals about this already in my walking on my site visits. Is there a way to be able to do dual immersion? And the answer to that is the state of Arizona says that it must be taught in English.
There was a change to that, wasn't there?
So that's what Mr. Buckley had told me that from Carver, that they can't teach Spanish as a primary source of language, that it's
You already have to
English
be,
mandated.
you can't be an EL student any longer. You have to be out of the EL program. So you're labeled, so everybody in that program is already English proficient.
Is there a way to have a dual immersion in our schools?
The issue with dual immersion then is we don't have enough people to sustain it all the way through a
Teachers
school.
and
That's the hardest part,
Okay.
because you need to have an English person, teacher, and then a Spanish teacher as their co-part every single grade level.
We don't
all the
have
way
enough
up.
bilinguals here in Yuma?
We have enough, we have enough teachers but to be willing to do it,
Okay,
It's different
That's-
to instruct.
yes.
yeah. Because that's to me, that's one of the
a little
reasons
bit-
why
Yeah.
that
That's
the parents.
Conversation is
It's
different than
different,
instruction.
yeah.
That's one of the reasons that I'm hearing from those parents that they don't want their kids going to these schools is because of the proficiency. These schools are ranking super low. I don't want my kid to go there because they're not going to learn anything. Well, it's a lie. But
We have to
they
break
don't
that.
understand.
The grade does not reflect the instruction. The
Exactly.
grade does not, reflect the learning that is going on.
Mhm.
And
So if we were able to find
But
some
when you
sort
have
of
kids that are,
feedback
they're
from the
coming in
parents.
here as migrants, or you have kids that are coming here seasonal, and you have these kids that are coming here that are Spanish speaking only, and you're trying to teach them or make them take a test in English, they're not gonna pass the test. So that's resulting in their proficiency ratings. That's why their ranking is probably low, is because the test scores are saying that they're low, when in all actuality, it's not.
I think there's a lot of things under the iceberg that are systematic issues that I don't think we can solve here. I mean, I think there are things like the preschool, like what OC Johnson, like there are ways to start to build the capacity and the agency of kids. But it's a very long-term plan and we're not going to see it overnight. But it's true. I mean, when you take a school like OC Johnson and you wrap it around with services for the family, for the students, you have a preschool that's rooted in best practice. You see these reading scores 4 years later, what happens? You see Carver implementing like a new strategy and how, but these are things that we have to keep doing. And it is unfortunate that people look at this letter grade as like a stamp of if the school is valid or legit or not.
Right.
And I think that's where the messaging from us is to share, like, I just went to this school and it's incredible what these students are doing. I mean, that's the piece that we have to keep sharing as champions of the district. And I'm very biased about this, but like, I have to live what I'm living. Like, I have my child is in Dorothy Hall District, he goes there. My child is in Gila Vista District, she goes there. Like, I believe in this district, does not matter if it's Carver or Gila Vista or Otondo. These are where my students are going because I believe in District 1. And I mean, it's great that there's parent choice, but I think that's part of us doing what we can as a collective impact, that we're saying, yeah, we believe in this district that we're in, and this is the good things. And it's hard because every time you share one negative thing, you have to have 11 positive things, they say, the stats say. So that's a lot of work on our part of like combating it. But I mean, I think all of these things, I think the bond measure, I think we're skipping the next one, but like that's something but it's not till 2026. That's an effort we have to engage in. And part of that is creating the story now to share with parents and voters that this isn't just to take your money, like this is how it can be impacted. And if we need to add a couple, for classrooms at Dorothy Hall, because they have already it set up and there's space for it, then maybe that's the effort we need to engage in now, so then we can have some preparation for August of 2026 or 7 or whatever, how long that would take. But I think that the growth out there is not changing.
No, it's not for decades. It's not
And
gonna
as
change.
yeah.
That's the only way you can go. You can't go anymore to the south.
Right.
You can't go anymore to the west. We got the river, we've got Somerton, we've got San Luis. We're done.
Yeah.
You have to go east. You don't have a choice. And as Yuma is slowly dying in a child population because everybody's wanting to live out in the east, you have to bring those kids in here. You're going to have to. And yes, there might be some kids that want to open enroll or might say, well, I'm going to go to private school. We're already hearing that from the parents at Sierra Pacific. We're already hearing that from the parents over at College Acres. I'm going to pull my kid. So, for us to say, well, I'm afraid to do this neighborhood because they're going to lose them. Well, you're going to lose the same ones over at El Prado and Sierra Pacific and College Acres the same way. They already voiced it. So you're going to have that collateral damage, if you want to call it that. You're not going to make everybody happy. But I think that if we can move those kids from the east side into our schools here and show that we have capacity schools, we can go to the state and say, okay, now we're ready for your help. And maybe they'll be more willing to. We get those kids from the east side that are English-speaking kids and bring them into these schools that are majority Spanish-speaking kids, and maybe those proficiencies will come up. And I'm not trying to say anything bad about that. I think that's a good thing, that we bring them in, and those are the kids that are learning by what the language that they were taught, rather than Spanish kids trying to learn off of a different language that they weren't taught. It's a barrier for them. I think in a perfect world for me, I'd like to see triple languages. I'd like to see Spanish, English, and sign language. If we could do that, I think we'd be in a whole better world, especially here in Yuma. You need to be bilingual. But, I don't know how you can make that happen, but I think that'd be something to do. And if we can make these schools, where you could do that immersion or do that to help the Spanish kids learn English and the English kids learn Spanish, I think that as a whole, you'd see the boat rise. You would see the grades go up.
When we went to Prado Estates in Sierra Vista, when I spoke with the parents, when they spoke with me, they're very, very happy that we came out to their communities and were able to translate these, what we were talking about. They're very, very positive, and I'm not going to repeat because what you said is excellent. What you said is excellent. There's no need to repeat. You're right. They voiced all these things, especially to me, and one of them even made the comment. She got up and talked and said, "Well, you don't care about us because we live in these facilities," and said, "I just live right behind you in the same facility," and couldn't hear a pin drop after that because we do care. And so that's my comment. And I had a quick question, real quick. Maybe someone can answer me this. Price Elementary, correct me if it's wrong, is at the Proving Grounds, correct? And that belongs to us. Okay. So they have a school on the base. When I go to the commissary at Marine Air Station here in Yuma, I've never seen a school there. Okay. That's a big base. Do we know why they've never put a school in the base for the service members at that base? Anybody?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Isn't Price part of a government initiative? It wasn't really part of the district.
I think it's based on the distance, like our schools.
Yeah, I realize it's
serve
out
them
there.
right there, so I
Okay,
think they built their own school based on the distance of how long it would take for them to come on a bus. Whereas
Yeah.
MCAS Yuma we have schools that are very close by, like Raleigh. So
That was a
Raleigh-
question that I had.
Yeah.
You're right. Although there's a lot of bases that I've been to that are in the communities and they have their own schools for the service members because of what they get with their orders, they get moved a lot.
Yeah.
And then when they go to another base, it's like the migrant program where they continue the
To a
curriculum.
different
Yeah,
DOT.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering why we never, but that makes sense. I realize Proving Grounds is way out there,
Yeah.
but I just a question that I had why
And
they didn't
that's-
have it.
Their money, like DOD
Yeah,
builds.
Yeah.
DOD paid
Yeah,
for
they
that.
built
And
it.
We
Schools
just-
on Military Base Program is what, yes, funding the build at Price right now.
And
Or
unlike
once it's done.
Dorothy Hall and Ron Watson, they do the repairs, the military would do the repairs, and am I correct that they built a new school there at Price, or?
It would still be, from my understanding, I would check with Mary to be certain, but it would be covered under SFB because of the setup it has on a military base.
Okay.
So the maintenance of the new school, because it wasn't our money, it was a combination of the DOD money, and then the school facilities board did, they came up with like $800,000 to cover it. We have to cover a little bit more of it now because there's an 80-20 split, and since it's been 7 years, the cost of that 80-20 went up a little bit. So we're having to put about 1.2 million into it to get the school finished.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I had. Thank you very
And
much.
they, the junior high kids over there are coming in.
Oh, yes.
They don't have a junior high there.
No, they live in Ron Watson.
So that's another busing issue comment or timing comment when there's that complaint of my kid's on the bus for too long.
Yeah, those are
How
tough ones
long
when
is
they're
that
coming
drive?
from.
Is it Improving Grounds to Ron Watson?
15 minutes.
25.
It's not long at all.
Really?
It's all
It's
95.
It's a highway.
It's a highway.
Yeah.
It's all highway. So it takes longer to get from, because I used to do both,
Okay.
I used to do all elementaries, okay? So I used to travel all around. So I'd start at Otondo. I could get to Price faster than I could get to Pecan Grove.
Yes. Yeah, surface streets are terrible with all the traffic and stoplights and all that.
Yeah.
You hit an interstate or a highway, you're gonna get there.
And that's before even, the new highway all the way
Two
out there. And I
lanes
assume
out
it's
there,
much
yeah.
faster. I haven't been out there yet. So, yeah, you just zoom right on out and you're there.
But with the presentation, so, Corey kind of alluded to, here are some other options for long-term visions and things to think about. But the ultimate goal for us for this particular conversation was just to get maybe some guidance from the board on information you might need or what kind of a direction we might want to look at so we can continue the conversation. We can make it as profitable and useful and beneficial as possible so we can start to come to some kind of an idea or a conclusion on what direction we want to start looking at. So that was really what I was looking for, is just to have this conversation and maybe get some direction on what your all's thoughts are on in terms of exploring some long-term solutions.
So a new school is 7, 15 years down the road?
Well, it's so if the bond passes in November 26, we'll probably typical time frame you'd sell in April, and then I want to say 5-ish years. If we build a K8, it might take a little bit longer. I'd have to talk to Chris exactly. What was Dorothy Hall was 3 years from groundbreaking to opening, I think.
I think so. That we were the last piece of the 2014 bond, and we opened in 2019.
Yeah.
So I think we were all out there, and that was like, I would say more like 2 years from when they actually started building.
Because I didn't get here till 16, and we didn't build it. It wasn't even built when I went to teach PE, and that was 18.
Right.
So yeah,
And we
less
opened
than
in
3 years.
2019. I think it was a pretty quick
A
turnaround.
couple years. So I would guess a K8 might take a little bit longer just because of the square footage. But my guess is from now, somewhere in the 5-year range, it could be opened.
Okay.
And then how long, I don't know if we've engaged in this particular thing, like in looking at expanding Dorothy Hall, like how long would 4 classrooms, maybe finding that information out?
Chris
I
is
think would
working
be
on
good.
that.
Cool.
And one thing I would say too is so it would take 6 classrooms to move the bubble through, but we get new revenue each year from those funds. So we could still build those classrooms out as those bubbles move through. So if it wasn't all at Dorothy Hall, if you added classrooms somewhere else, you could add additional classrooms each year to move with that bubble. We could kind of stay ahead of that too. So we do get new revenue each year in those 3 funds. I wouldn't want to stop the bus replacement for 5 years.
Correct.
I would want to, kind of get back into that, but that would give us a little bit of additional money to get a larger chunk of classrooms now, and then we could do maybe 1 or 2 a year after that kind of
So
thing.
that's a year to 2 years before those are operational.
For those classrooms, I would guess take less time than that, but I would have to talk to Chris to know exactly. He's working on some information there.
And I would love to, Mrs. Lagunas' point, like I would love to have some information on the Gwynnetham closure, like how many went to Raleigh, how many went to McGraw, and then how many do we think we lost out of that bunch, because that is good. Because again, like your point, people are going to be impacted, students are going to be impacted, but we want to do the least amount with the greatest return on investment and with a clear communication, because whoever's being impacted, we want to give them enough time to plan and to talk through it and the whys, but to be able to have that, if we're thinking about moving Trail Estates into town, but we realize that there's 300 students versus 200 students impacted, I would vote for the 200 students because that's 100 students less that are impacted. But I don't know those numbers to be able to even feel like I could give an ethical vote, at this point.
Do we have a number of each school that's under capacity and how many students they're under on each one? I mean, what is our target for each school?
We
85%,
I think he
right?
said 85%.
yeah, roughly 85. I'm going to check to see what that
So
target
we need to
number is
know-
and how long you need to be there in order for it to be considered for qualifying. So we'll get the number, or I guess the deficit of each school. We can show you what the capacity is, what the current enrollment is, then you can see what that is, and then I'll figure out what that target percentage is or what's required in order for the state to consider that.
So then that magic number, once we find out, okay, we need to move this many kids to be able to go to capacity, 85% or whatever that number is, then the next goal is which neighborhoods are going to be moved.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to, again, the newest subdivisions should be the ones to move out. And I mean, I gave my recommendation of one neighborhood, but that's not like set in stone concrete. That was an example of this neighborhood is just exploding. And he's got, I want to say, at least 5 more subdivisions in that section that hasn't even been built out yet. that they're still gonna do at about 400 or 500 homes per subdivision.
Mhm.
I mean, you've got huge growth potential just in that area, but if there's other areas that we can look at, I would like to know what neighborhoods can we look at that maybe can match student capacity to the decline or, the undersize that we have.
Yeah.
So let's do this once, let's do it once and for all and make it a permanent situation until we have that school to have them go out and relocate to at that later time. But I don't like the idea of, let's just pick a couple here and then 2 or 3 years down the road, we're in the same boat again. I think we need to do it once and make a huge impact to where we're gonna capitalize and we're gonna maximize every single school. Because if you look at the total number of students that we need to be at capacity in every single district or every single school in our district, we have more than enough students in our community to do that. There's no doubt in my mind that with the number of students we have in our area, in our district, if you evenly put them in all of our schools, you would be at or over capacity even with that.
I don't think you have, I don't know if you have the data or not, or how hard it would be, and I don't want to make an overly complicated data call, but I'm curious to see what the house to student ratio in these new subdevelopments, because I'm going through my head of all my friends that I know that have moved in behind the new Walmart or the Walmart out in the foothills, and they're my age, no kids. And I know quite a few couples that have bought, they're in their 50s, they can afford to buy the $400,000 houses that they couldn't before because their kids have moved out of the house. And I remember Kenny's neighborhood, there's no kids.
Yeah.
It's a whole
The
street.
neighborhoods that
So
are.
but what I'm getting at is that unless we can pull that information, I would hate to take a whole neighborhood and we don't hear any complaints about it,
Yeah.
and we gain not one student because now they're
Well, that's where we
There-
have to dig into, even in my neighborhood, which encompasses Tillman, Terabella, Curly Ranch, there's 3 kids getting on that Dorothy Hall bus at my stop. And there's like 2 other stops, but there's not many that are getting. So even though it's a subdivision, 3 subdivisions, because of choice, people are going all over, private, charter, so
Well, I'm
even in
just
those
looking at-
areas,
I'm just looking at the
Those
people that
kids,
are able
period.
to afford those houses are folks that have had jobs for 30-something years and their kids have moved out and now they can afford that $400,000 house in those neighborhoods and they
Yes.
don't have kids.
Yeah.
You may have 15 kids out of 100 homes.
So I agree 100% with
So
what you're saying.
I don't know if we can gather that kind
Just
of,
look and see
can
where
we
the
get that
kids
kind of
actually are.
information where the density of the children is? Because I'd hate to take a big swath and only get 15 kids when we can take a smaller.
Well, I
You know
can
what I mean?
guarantee that the neighborhood I'm talking about is Max Hall Homes.
Mhm.
Okay, that neighborhood is not the $450,000, $500,000 homes.
Right, no.
These are homes that are family homes. Those homes have kids. I drive through those neighborhoods every single day doing work over there, doing electrical work. And I can tell you, there's bicycles, there's kids playing in the streets. Those neighborhoods are full of kids. Those are the Max Hall homes. I'm not talking about Sierra Montana, even though that's in the gist of it.
We said from Araby to AD, right?
Yes, because there is some kids that are in Sierra Montana. But if you go down Avenue 8E and go straight south,
Mhm.
on the right-hand side or the west side, those are all Max Hall homes. And behind Max Hall homes is Max Hall Townhomes.
Right.
There is tons of kids and families in that neighborhood.
Okay. I don't know the data. That's why I'm
Yeah.
asking if we can get
Yeah,
that,
I
because
think
I don't
that's-
want to,
yeah.
I don't want to
But I'm
blindly
not
drive through a
zeroing
neighborhood
in
and
that
count
that's the
kids.
specific one that we need to hit. I'm using
Right.
that as a prime example, that is a huge
But being
family
able to
neighborhood.
pull that information to show where the density of the children per neighborhood is going to be valuable
Right.
in conjunction with logistics of transportation.
I
Right?
think there's like the GIS mapping or whatever it's called, where you can map, like give all the addresses of the kid or the families, and how they register, and just being able to like plot it to like where are they and what,
Yeah.
where are the biggest density of
That's if
areas.
they're registered.
And that's really the
Yeah.
neighborhood.
They have
That's
to be
that
registered
neighborhood.
in our district.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's really the neighborhood that's closest to our districts. I mean, you really can't go further east than Fortuna Road, because now you're talking a 20-minute, 25-minute bus ride. So you got to come in closer to town, and that is one of the biggest subdivision neighborhoods that I can think of. And I'm sure there's some that's a little bit closer, maybe smaller pockets, that maybe we can include those pockets. But first things first, we need to know how much of a deficit do we have in each school? What is the number that we need to be able to meet to be able to have them at capacity? From there, we need to know what neighborhoods do we need to think about moving that has that capacity that we can move and do this as a one-time thing.
Well, it won't be a one-time thing. If we build a school in the foothills, we have to
Yeah,
take
then
that
they'll be able to-
But we're talking,
redistricting out
how
there.
many years are we talking down the road? I'm
Potentially, it
talking
could be
about in the
5.
next,
Could be
if we
5.
do this in 2026, 2027, moving these neighborhoods, that's 1 year away versus 7 years before a school's built.
Right, but telling parents twice within one child's K through 8 span of school is rough, right? If we make a decision to redistrict or remove the boundaries, it needs to be thought through with, if we're gonna do a school, if we're just gonna have to status quo endure, so that when we open the school, it creates relief across the board, and it's a one-time
Right.
for the next 15, 20 years
Yeah.
relief versus removing those boundaries now to get us 5 years down the road to build that new school and then go back and reboundary those same kids that could be going, their path to school now changed again. It'll be a tough call for the board to have to.
No, I
not a
understand.
tough call, but it'll
Where,
be-
where was the idea of if there was a bond? I thought there was like an area, was it 8.5 feet? What was the, or did I dream that up? Like, if there was a new school in the foothills, where was it ideally going to be?
It would be back in the, kind of behind Walmart. I don't remember the
Okay.
exact
It's more
location,
like
but
Tenny, isn't it? I think it's
a
Tenny,
little further
which
out,
is just a
but
little past Westwind RV Park.
Yes.
Right.
That's
Okay.
Tenny.
Because that's where I'm
AWC
like,
has some
again,
property
thinking
out
about
there.
future is like, to your point, Keith, like, if that is the area because of space and availability or whatever, then looking, I mean, that should factor in. But, and also like this magnet school, like, what do you think, goodness, like about how long would that take to, and again, it might be a pilot that then is evolving, like, how much time would we need to plan for something like that to at least start that process? Because you have Fourth Avenue, you have Roosevelt,
Right.
and is there a way to integrate and like, could that be done not next year but the following year? Or like, I mean, what would you, when you were thinking about this, like, what were you?
my thought was probably 2028 would
Okay.
maybe be the earliest we could do it. That's going to be one of Danny's tasks
Making note.
if that's something that the board has interest in, to explore what is a magnet school, what's required to make that really happen, what's required to make that function well. The idea would be to utilize funding, perhaps bond money, to do a front office somewhere in the gym/Fourth Avenue school area, so it's central, can serve both campuses. Remodel the current front offices to provide educational opportunities, so whatever magnet direction we go, those spaces could be aligned with that. Because then
Because
you have
those,
that.
on the back end, those campuses, like the gate, like they could share. I mean,
Mhm.
it's like, yeah.
Yep. And then there are some metal buildings I would love to get rid of and redo those as actual, like, new, better functioning spaces for the ESS students, the bathrooms. You could have all that stuff kind of built into that space, which I think would be good too. So I was thinking somewhere in the 2028.
Okay.
Mr. Sheldall said, his recommendation was maybe you shut the school down for a year, build it out the way you want, and then rebrand it on a grand opening. Thought that's not a terrible idea, something to consider. But then again, you move those students for a year. Where do they go? Do you get them back? And so that's something to consider in that movement as well. But it would give you that free reign to really think about how you want to reimagine that whole space,
Yeah.
set it up the way you want.
Well, if it's
aligned
gonna
to-
be a magnet school, the students that are going to one may not end up wanting to go or
Sure.
end up going to the magnet. So you would rezone them one time, zone them
Mm-hmm.
one time. And then there would be whatever process for them. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Okay, I
that's-
was just trying to be like, so now I know that that's not an option for like the 20.
Yeah, not in
next
the
year,
next
but
few
yeah, okay.
years.
Mhm.
It would probably take bond money, honestly, to be
Okay.
able to redo that space and make it function in the way it should if you're going to reimagine that space.
You don't
So
want
if
to
we-
just call it something different.
So what I have, we have the capital funding expansion option, roughly $2.5 million. Excuse me, we have the bond for new school, adding classrooms or K-8 magnet school, and we have change boundaries of schools. Those are what I've heard everybody say so far.
It might take all three.
It may take a mixture of these, right?
Yeah.
So I think what we
Yeah.
can do is the experts that have been in the school business for a lot longer than all of us combined on the board, take these items back and kind of put together a combination of those pros and cons, costs, timelines, something like that, so that when we can sit here and talk about things that we think will work all day long, and we can spend the next 4 hours, solving the world's problems. But I think that, and the other thing is rebranding, not rebranding, but just changing the perspective of the schools in town. And how do we have a huge marketing program or where we just talk about the great things of the schools that are we'll call them the inner cities, I don't know, but, get that word out to people. And I think that should happen. That's an idea.
Well, and I think that's what Christine
consider.
does all the
Yeah.
time. She
We
does a
work
very
really hard.
nice job of constantly highlighting our schools throughout the.
She does a great job of highlighting them, but I think there's got to be a way where we can change some of that. Maybe we need to sit down with the city and talk to them about, hey, I know GCU did it, right? They added a room for the police officers because the neighborhood around GCU is pretty rough. They added a room for the police officers to do the reports. Just having the police cars in the parking lot and them walking on campus was a huge relief to parents. And I was looking at when my daughter was getting ready to go there. And that was one of their highlights is we gave space to the police officers to come in, air conditioned, coffee machine, fill out reports. Well, if part of that stigma is that it's in a bad neighborhood, if there's police officers, not just SROs, but police officers coming in to use those facilities to do their reports, maybe that's enough of a deterrent to the children and the people around the school that maybe scare parents to deter them from being around the campus because there's so much police car activity coming and going for good things. So there's got to be ways that we can come up with to change that stigma of the neighborhood. And maybe the city needs to get on board about helping out these neighborhoods to clean them up. I know I listened to Welton in their town meeting talk about, neighborhood. They go through lists of houses of there's garbage out there, been out there for a while. We just need to go out there and clean it up. Maybe our city needs to help take care of these neighborhoods to get them cleaned up around our public schools so they don't look like a gem in the middle of a trash heap. I'm not saying that's a trash heap. Don't say that.
You're on YouTube, so it's gonna be shared later.
Stricken from the record.
But something because I really think that it'll help ease a lot of the parents' stress and anxiety if that stigma that wall is starting to come down. Combination with magnet school, combination with new school, but so a lot of that. And maybe Christine's a great one to look at other schools across the country that have turned around the public's perception of their school.
I think part of that's going to also have to include some investment in refacing the school too, so that the optics of that help when you're trying to. You can brand all you can, right? But if you don't put some investment into what the appearance of the school looks like from a welcoming standpoint, I think there's still a little bit of a disconnect that you face.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Miss Logan did a great job, or at least she's doing a great job right now at getting the exposure with her neighborhood pantry, things that she's doing within her own school. She's been in the newspaper. She's been on the news. She's getting that exposure. And those are the things that these other schools need to do. Maybe they need to do open houses. Maybe they need to do public invites where they showcase their school. And maybe we need to be a part of that, to help each school at a certain date highlight this school, that this is what the school does. This is what, and the public is welcome. Come see it. Come do a classroom tour. Come, let us show you what we're about. That way you can defeat those stigmas, that, oh, well, this is a bad neighborhood. Pecan Grove is not a bad neighborhood. That's an outstanding neighborhood. It's an older neighborhood, but there are some beautiful homes in there. And there's some people that, there's nothing wrong with that neighborhood. To sort of defeat that stigma, maybe have those open houses, have those, community gatherings, whatever you want to call it, have a cookout, have a whatever you want to do, have some sort of an event, activities that the public is invited to, but you got to invite the right public.
Right, you can't invite the neighborhood. You
it's
can't
not the
invite the
neighborhood.
neighborhood because the neighborhood lives there. So
Yeah, you got to be able to have a reason
change it.
for them to come across town to take a look at these things and say, hey, we want you, and give them a reason to feel wanted. that would help that to have that. But, Ms. Logan, I think she's doing a great job with her school of getting that exposure.
Yeah.
And maybe, some of the other schools could learn off of her.
Yep.
All right,
So
anything else?
lots, no, those were I'm trying to summarize whatever to kind of give
I got
you
one
folks
more.
some direction to
Yeah.
look into.
Appreciate it.
So when we were in the neighborhood meetings, the parents had talked about and had asked, why has the school board never been involved with the city of Yuma as far as meetings and trying to have that relationship? And so I had offered up that maybe somebody in the board ought to go to those meetings.
What was
sorry,
their
I missed that.
objective? Like, what
To
was
try to
their?
work with the city on how the city could maybe help us out with a school, or help us out with the boundaries, or help us out, trying to see where the schools, because what they were saying was, you have these developers that are coming in and building these, a mile square subdivision, but nothing was allocated for a school. And so why are we not
So they
asking
just
those
don't,
questions?
maybe they don't understand actually how the funding works, so maybe that's where we need to. And it's not the city of Yuma, it would be the county board of supervisors, correct? Is that?
It's a little bit of both, and I've already talked to Doug Nichols,
Most of
and I've
that's
already talked
city.
to, I've already talked to Chris, I just forgot his name now. Chris Morris, yeah, and I'm supposed to be having a meeting with both of them.
Because I think most of that
To
area
talk about some of
behind,
that.
I don't remember where that cutoff is behind the Walmart on those new subdevelopments is mostly city, I believe. The county doesn't start till you get out towards.
My
County
fence
14.
line from my backyard to the east is city of Yuma Desert. My fence line to the south for 10 acres to County 14th Street is city of Yuma. The dirt road going up into my neighborhood on the north of that is city of Yuma. We're on a county island, but everything around us is city of Yuma.
Right, and so that would be city,
But like 10E, or is it 90 or 10E East is county?
city.
That's city.
So most of, when you start looking at the city map going out into the foothills, I mean, there's pockets of county in the foothills,
Like Mesa del Sol, Yuma East,
city,
Yeah, that's all city.
city,
Mesa del Sol is city?
Yeah.
yeah, Walmart City.
Yeah.
Count what?
So
It
for
was a
right
bit
now,
more.
Yeah,
we're,
they just
They just-
it goes
incorporated it.
around,
Oh, okay.
yep,
Yeah, the
Savant
city's taking up
Estates,
everything it possibly can out there.
Country Breeze, what's that, Circle J Ranch. Even those are ranch, they're grandfathered in, no, that's county. That Circle J Ranch is county. But then you go
Del Sur
right past
Estates is
that, Del
county.
Sur, you get past that over there by West Winds. So even like when you're coming back, there's a lot of city in the foothills.
Yeah, there's little
lot.
pockets, but eventually those little pockets are gonna go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just gonna start taking.
Well, I would
over.
encourage, just like they come and speak to the call to the public, I would encourage them to go and speak at, people need to hear the community's voices and parents and how that's impacted, but it's,
It's beneficial when they build out in those areas, property taxes, people are buying houses and they're paying property taxes, and that goes into the big pot that some of it funnels to us somehow through that really
Isn't it like
complicated.
57 cents off every dollar comes to education?
Statewide, right? Not directly to us?
I have to look. So
I don't-
we get a lot of our funding from the state equalization formula. So only about 25% of the money that we get is local. The rest of it comes from the state equalization
Do
formula.
we get 100% of property tax, or does that go to the state redistributes it?
I would imagine that none of ours goes to the state because it
Okay.
isn't even enough to cover what the high school district, Crane, all that, plus AWC, all those kinds of things. So we take more from the state than we give them for that. Yeah.
So these expansions are feeding into the price increase, but it might be 50 cents.
Mhm.
But by the time it gets distributed out, but so as they expand, they get those out there. I think somebody mentioned that Dorothy Hall School, that property was donated,
Mhm.
and
For the school, yeah.
so there's developers out there can do things, but how do you make a developer do something?
Was that a forcible donation? That was something that was said by some of the families too, and I don't know how true it is that,
well, people are gonna make up stories no
Yeah,
matter
that they were
what
like,
happens,
well-
so I don't think we should entertain what people that are pissed off about a change
well,
coming.
no, that because the Halls had that subdivision, that part of the agreement was that they would have to allocate a certain part of land for a school. Was that even a part of that? or no?
I know they got to name it because
Yeah, I
they
don't
donated,
recall.
so they got to
Yeah,
My
they
understanding
donated the
was
land, it was theirs.
they wanted to like they approached us,
Yeah,
is
they
my
wanted-
recollection of
Oh,
that.
that's good.
They approached us and asked if we would be interested in a partnership with that.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. That's just something I had heard. I was just like,
Yeah.
because it would be like, well, why are they making the halls do it, but nobody else?
Yeah,
You know, it didn't make sense to me.
yeah.
I think they-
No, I think that was
they did,
something they wanted to.
do it.
Yeah, it's mutually beneficial for sure.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And just
So-
like on your formula, also like preschool and ESS classrooms don't help with those numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
So like, that's where a lot of what you're gonna see.
Yep.
So like, if, as our ESS population has
Grows.
grown tremendously over the last couple of years, so 19% of our population is under the ESS umbrella. So like Mr. Ponder said, if an autism classroom, we say plus or minus 2 with 10, so as low as 8 with super high needs and as high as 12 is the ideal class size. So if you theoretically would have 30 kids in there, but we're only serving around 12.
Mm-hmm.
So as those classes are multiplied, you just have to think about that like those classrooms out in any of our schools,
Mhm.
they're in that formula and the state doesn't consider that. So like also preschools, they don't consider that either. So I
So
have
really you're saying-
558 kids that are K-5 at Dorothy Hall, but I also have 40 preschoolers.
Yeah.
So I really have about 600 kids on my campus,
Right.
but the 40 preschoolers don't count.
So really where the effort should be is advocacy at the legislator, because we
Correct.
need to get them to change their ways, so.
Because preschool is super
Yeah.
important. It's part of
Yes, and we
laying
see the
foundation. That
outcomes,
is why we have expanded our
Yes.
preschool.
but it's
because that
impacting
will-
us in the funding.
Right.
I think we have
And
a better
that
chance
has-
of me building a school,
Yes.
just if I'm being honest, than impacting the legislature right
Right.
now.
So
Well,
just
this
so
is
you
where
know,
when
like
people
as you're
come to
looking
us,
to
they're
like,
like, this is why your vote matters.
Right, for
This is
sure.
why it matters, why you
No,
should
it's
go.
valid.
but as you're
'Cause
looking
we-
to max out those, that doesn't mean that there are all these empty classrooms there.
Correct.
There may be classrooms that we are serving students in.
Mhm.
There's just not enough
Less
students
students
within
because of
those
the need.
classrooms
Yeah.
for it to meet their ratio. that
So
they're
to
looking
make up for it, you have to overcapacity a
Yeah,
class.
Correct.
That's,
which is,
yes.
So then you have classes that are sitting at 35, plus but that's, we need to serve our students.
Yeah.
We need to serve our preschool students. We need to serve our ESS population. We need to do all those things. But the state does not consider that. We're doing that because
So
we
when we
know that's
build
what's
these new
best for kids.
classrooms, we need to make them double the size and have a couple of extra teachers in there.
I mean.
Yep, you can see something over at 2258. Before we do a winter, we have about 100 kids in our redesigned library.
Yep.
That used to be the library,
Yep,
with 4 teachers and 1 para, and it is,
phenomenal.
so, that's just reimagining what we have traditionally done in
Mhm.
classrooms.
And you had mentioned, and when you were giving me that site visit on that, how you had less problems too.
Yep.
Because when there was a problem child, teacher could
Right.
take that one and class still continued because you had the other teachers in there. So
Absolutely.
I think it's a great program.
what subjects are you teaching in that?
Everything.
Everything's.
It's-
And there's
it's
breakout,
cool.
there's breakout sessions too, so the same classroom teachers have their same classroom, so they take the kids and break up their
And they
groups.
compete against each other in
Yeah.
there. It is,
So
yeah.
2 different tracks will give parents the option to pick. What is a traditional track for a parent who believes in the traditional path of a 6th grade experience, and then also this other path that's more of a collective unified
And
group.
that's just for 6th graders that
Just
you
for
have right
6th
now? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how the data
It's
changes
a pretty
on
cool function.
success for that, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
So just to summarize, some more information about the capital plan, which could include a bond, adding classrooms from our own funding, conversations about boundary adjustments, looking at a K-8 magnet school, and some information on maybe some kind of a marketing approach for an image or campaign or something like that. As it relates to like timelines, costs, plans, long-term, that kind of stuff. Did I summarize, capture all that properly? Did I miss
think so.
anything?
Do you know what schools are the ones that are the most primed to be able to expand?
Dorothy Hall is the best.
Utility-
Yes.
Yeah.
Is the most
You said it.
well-suited, I apologize. The most well-suited.
I have it on, we have it actually right here. Replay.
Strike that from the record. Dorothy Hall's the the best suited right now with the setup. And then Chris is working on some other options on what might be the next best thing in terms of the space we currently have.
So we
and
need to
how
look
we
at
could
those
provide
schools
something.
and see what, how would that look?
Yep.
I think that when I did a site visit on Otondo, I think they talked about, had room for expansion too.
Yeah. It was one of the other ones where, I mean, they have a massive library, so maybe you can carve that into a classroom or two and provide some relief for ESS or something like that.
What,
So that's an option.
This may be highly unpopular, I don't know, other than I did just 7th and 8th grade in junior high many years ago, but is there any opportunity, because back in the day, Woodard was the only one that had 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the idea of like Gila Vista, because we're taking away some of these students from the east coming into Gila Vista, and that seems to work well. But like in the north end schools, or is there any opportunity to, but I guess still then you have, and maybe it would go along with that magnet school, is to keep, you'd have a magnet school K-8, let's say, but then the other north end schools go all the way up to 6th grade. So you increase capacity of like the 6th grade, and then you just have one K-8 down here, and then I don't know, or Woodard, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of, there has been some conversations with parents to the point of getting more information that going to junior high in 6th grade is very scary. Not necessarily from a child's point of view, my kid was ready, but like as a parent. And so I don't know if that would, like as a surveyor, if we're collecting data or whatever around, would that change a little bit
Shift
from
them within
people
the
in
city.
but again, I know that going to some of those schools, I mean, if there's capacity and if they're able to have a 6th grade, would that help with any numbers in keeping them here and rooted? And then they would go to 4th Ave, or they would go to Woodard or whatever in this area. I don't know. I was just thought of that right now because I know we've kind of flip-flopped, and like Crane has done a little bit of both. And then Crane now is like back to where I think all of them go to 6th grade. I mean, Gowan goes through 8th, but right. And then junior highs are just 7th and 8th.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know how those numbers, and then you wouldn't be moving, again, you would have to move some kids, I'm sure, but you would have some kids that are able to stay in their elementary till 6th grade. But I don't know. I'm sure that lots of that was into play when they chose to move them. So I don't know.
So the schools that are under capacity, do we have the classroom to be able to do that? Because I like that idea. I think that'd be, I mean, if you can, you have an empty classroom or some classrooms that are a little bit short, bunch them up to get the numbers and then bring in 6th grade.
We could certainly look at, that would be a reversal of, I think, what was the last 6th grade we moved?
Carver. It was Carver when Matt Buckley came in, so about 6 years ago.
Because we used to have 6th grade at our elementary.
And Pecan Grove.
And then moved them.
Was with them, and then Raleigh was
The north end.
was before that.
Yeah.
Do we have any other junior highs besides 4th that's under?
Gila Vista, I think,
Gila
has
Vista's
capacity.
under some.
So I mean,
Ron
moving
Watson
them out,
could
is that
maybe
going
take
to
a
affect
few.
those numbers?
Yeah.
I mean,
Then
Well, if you
affect that
shift the
middle
6th
school.
grade
It would.
back to elementary, it would hurt.
But to the back,
It
like to the
definitely hurt
magnet, I mean,
4th
again,
Ave.
maybe that's not where it's happening right now, but I'm thinking like, if 4th Avenue is slated in the future as a prime location, which I love that for like a magnet school, do you do a pilot program that maybe we were talking about like a gifted or a 1 or 2 class for the year that we redistrict, or we say, okay, the rest of the schools down here in North End are keeping 6th grade, the year 27 or whatever, 26, whatever it is, 28. And then we're doing a pilot program maybe next August of like, it's just a couple classrooms, and we're going to have a certain amount of spots, and it's the smartest kids in all of the land. And then everyone's like, yes, I want my kids to go there. I don't know. FFA is going to be there, to your point, and welding, and I don't know. Anyways, that I'm dreaming now, but like, and maybe this is better suited for the board retreat of like really being able to dive into it. But is that an option? And then you just do a pilot program of a smaller amount of kids for this magnet. This is what we're looking to do maybe in 2028. So you can gain some kids in that way, and you have a small pilot program, but then you keep 6th grades at some of these North End schools that can help with 50, 60 kids, I don't know, 2 classes. And then you can try out that magnet, like a pilot, a smaller, because it's really hard to completely shift. And I think maybe that's where Jamie's coming from. to like an idea of maybe shutting down for a year, one of the schools, to really think about it. But going from like not having one to then boom, like we're doing K through 8, like magnet school. That's not how like Gowan was successful either. You know, you have a smaller program, you start to build it, you create want and a demand, and you have resources to provide for whatever set of kids they are that we decide. And then you can then keep some of the 6th grades. I don't know.
I like it. That's a good option.
So there's another option we can add to the list.
Create like a 6th grade experience,
Yeah.
kind of different.
It creates exclusiveness, which is.
You
what some
cannot,
people-
you cannot take away 6th grade at Woodard. That's like what it's been forever.
So what, when would you like some follow-up with this information?
I mean, are we,
Are we able to, do we want to do another study?
well, what was the second thing, Keith, on the board? Like, when were you thinking of this board
Board retreat?
I mean, if we're gonna have some specific time, I don't know what all was included in that.
Board retreat?
I thought we were just going fishing.
That's how we're gonna create some goals.
Going to Coronado Island.
Is that on the record?
Yeah.
When was it? June? Normally in June,
I
right?
think so,
It's in
yeah.
June, but we may have to do July. But when we've got time, I want to give everyone here opportunity to go through I mean, that's a lot, I think. I don't think it's something we do quick. So if we did our retreat sometime in July, gives everybody an opportunity to get the information together. So then we'll still be able to gather some stuff in Friday reports on, I'd like to get updates on this information so that we're not learning about everything all at once. You know, as you complete one, maybe share it with us in a Friday report so we can read through it and we can come in.
Yeah,
Then we can do sometime in July board retreat. We're going to have to do a meeting in July for budget.
Yep.
And
could that be all part?
Could be.
Well, I guess, or we could, for the board retreat, if we need a location within the district and.
we've normally done it here.
Yeah, I said Gowan is open if we want, because it's a bigger space and it's in district and it's open. We can, if we wanted. I know that like McGraw leadership, because they couldn't use this room last minute, they needed. And
It is
they were like,
closer to
this
Du Bois.
room is great. And there was like all this, yeah,
Yeah, because in the board retreat, we go over establishing our goals
yeah.
for the next school year. And, you know, it's typically the board, superintendent.
I think Julie has come down before.
Yes, and I do recommend having her,
to
because
lead
she's
it.
came down once before to help guide the conversation and lots of good information. I think last year was
Yeah.
very productive.
What would be your recommendation, Mr. Ponder, on, like, would it be like a day would be suffice? And if we get done early, that's fine, and we.
Last time, well, the last few times it's been,
A few hours.
yeah, 3 hours.
Yeah, something like that.
3 hours. It's not, when you're looking for a bigger venue, I'm thinking it's 6, 7 people and you
Yeah.
just have more room to stretch, but it's
Yeah,
done in here. If it's early, because we've had them in the morning, just the board's availability. We've done it at 9 o'clock in the morning. We've had snacks and things like that. And we just kind of go over what our goals were, you know, so between now and that time, you know, go through and look at our goals, look at potential goals. Where do you think we need to put? Obviously, we have one that we're going to be focusing on. That's the subject of today's meeting. But you want to keep the goals short. 3 goals are good. You know, you start getting too many goals,
Yep.
you get too much going out there. You want to be able to define them. Like one of our goals this year is improvement in academics, but we put that emphasis, the board put that emphasis on math,
Math.
because that was an area that we felt we needed to focus on. And I think that's, you know, beared some good fruit. So
And we're gonna have results from testing and stuff by that meeting to be able to really redefine our goals. Okay.
get milestones. And so then in December, there's a review of the goals and how the superintendents accomplish those goals. And then you have your the second review at the end where you establish whether or not the monetary money and the goals have been matched. So there is a little bit of that, but the retreat is just the board coming together saying, hey, these are our goals.
Yeah.
Talk about the direction we really want the school to go to. Like, you know, we need to focus on bonding. So what do we expect from the staff and the superintendent to provide us while they're going down the path of a bond or while they're going down the path of these things? But this is going to be in about the same time as we do our board retreat. So, but it would be something if it's going to be an ongoing, right? We won't have a decision, I don't think, in the next meeting on this subject. So part of that is the board in that retreat commits to, okay, if we need to meet every other month just to get updates on what's going on.
We'll create a
That's when we
communication
make
plan.
that, yeah, we make that commitment to doing it and try to find a time so that we're not sitting down and, you know, marathon meetings and
Yeah.
trying to digest what everybody's spent 6 months putting together and we have 3 hours to digest and understand, whereas do it in small. So that's what we're going to do in the board retreat is that's what that's for. It's not a meeting. It's the board's retreat to kind of plan the future.
Okay.
I think it's a good opportunity to do that.
And for the June meeting, like one of the
Oh.
biggest,
We're gonna move June to the 17th.
Huh?
Move the meeting to
The
the
10th?
17th.
10th is
From the
what is-
10th to the 17th. It's gonna play out better.
I'm
So instead of June 10th, June 17th.
It's gonna play out
Board
better
meeting.
for getting the finances back, and then I'll be back too. So I'm not gonna be here.
the 17th of June, okay,
Just the following week.
okay. And then, but, cause we still have some, like a sense of principle we have to vote for, right, too? Okay,
Yeah, we'll be
Right.
fine with this.
And then-
Yeah.
okay.
So just the future is we've got that meeting 2 weeks later, so it's gonna put us the first week of July for the budget, and then the board retreat after that. And I suppose we can do the budget and board retreat, we can just end the regular meeting and move into board
The
retreat.
retreat, yeah.
So we'll have to figure out what date in July that works
So no
for.
meeting on the 10th.
No one will show up just for the budget.
Yeah,
Just- And in the
I'm
past,
sure
we've
you
done
have.
the board retreats on a Saturday, not during the week, so it gives us more time to just casually hang out and
yeah,
go over things.
as long as I'm here. And Monica, what was the date? Oh, it was the reporting, the mandated reporting. I told you I'm gone.
That's in July, so I'm gonna, I got.
With their
you guys
Mr.
on
Pallet.
So I'm gonna, yeah, so I will
I
set
can't
that up.
believe he's still.
Doing,
Do we want to
Yeah, but
try
I saw a
to
thing, I was like,
establish
Mr.
a board
Pallet,
retreat
you're
day?
my principal.
Yeah,
Stay busy.
if everybody's got their calendars, we can establish the retreat date.
Oh, perfect.
Last time I checked, July, I have no life.
But Tuesday, July 1st, Mr. Ponder,
Oh,
on
we
your
are
first day.
Tuesday, July 1st. Okay.
Is what?
That could be a rough week.
Just kidding.
I was like, the week of the first,
Could
I'm
be
at
a
a
rough
conference, the week
one.
of the second.
Yeah.
Not all of your EA will be there.
Yeah. So the 16th through the 19th, Danny and I will be in Tucson for an ASBO meeting. So that,
Would the week of the 21st work?
You'll need the board goals.
Board
before
retreat?
Admin events.
yeah, as long as it's Monday or Tuesday, 'cause we have admin advance 24th and 25th, so we usually report what those board goals are at that time. We bring all of our principals and assistant
Okay.
principals and TOSAs in to just kind of give them a, here's what the year is going to look like kind of thing, and just have an opportunity to talk to them and get everyone back on the same page. So
Right.
love to have them before that for
I mean,
sure.
is a Saturday okay with everybody?
Yeah, I can do that.
We can do a Saturday morning, say around 9 o'clock.
That works.
We got
So
the,
this is the 19th though?
the
You won't be back right for the
You won't be back
26th.
I would need to do it before that.
No,
So we
because
meet
you
on
have to give the
24th and
admin
25th.
advance, right?
Okay.
So the 12th or the 5th.
The 12th I'm gone, and I'm also gone the 5th. I'm at a conference the week of 4th of July, which is nuts, but I guess Europe does not celebrate that. So,
Why not?
but the 8th, and then I leave the 8th, I come back the 15th, but you guys are gone the 16th or the 19th.
Correct.
Could we do that Monday or Tuesday, even though it's during the week?
The
21st,
21st or
22nd.
22nd? I don't see why not.
I'll be here.
I don't have, I mean, you guys have anything on your calendar that,
21st, 20th,
I'm
whatever
here.
works. Whatever works.
So
I'm ready to set the
my
night.
I have our board meeting
So you
that
need to
week, but
submit
I
your
don't-
travel arrangements to the board for
I know.
approval.
I just shared my calendar with Monica, so she just knows. Like,
The whole thing's blocked out.
it is like insane.
I'm probably gonna have to do that with her too. Like,
I-
filling up.
Yeah, I think that the Monday is probably better because we have our board meeting for Gowan, but I don't think that's until, because if we wanted to do during the day or like afternoon, if I can confirm tonight to make sure that that's, I think that the board, actually, I'm gonna text this.
I'm available on the 21st pretty much all day. So
Yep.
if we need to do it during the day, I mean, you guys.
I can make it happen.
You can make
I
it
can make it
happen.
work, yep.
Of course,
You-
of course.
You're gonna check with your
I'm retired, I'm
supervisor.
I'll confirm right now if we don't have a board meeting on the 21st, I can do during the day, no problem, but I'm just gonna make sure that.
If we do, we can, I mean, we can
We'll pick
do
a
a
time.
lunch or we can do a dinner,
Yeah.
an early dinner or something if you guys want to.
That'll work.
Should I
7:21.
put a hold on that or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
7:21, all day,
All day.
12 midnight to 12 midnight. Block your whole day.
I told you I'm
Look
ready.
at your new boss,
Well, we got-
Oh, I just saw
got
something
quite a
on my
list here.
calendar.
We got something to go over.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll confirm what times work.
Okay, yeah, so the board retreat, but the facilities, I kind of need to back up just a little bit. The facilities committee task force, Anthony's not here, really, it's his request. I spoke with him and he's fine with, I know I asked Dennis to provide us a plan in lieu of a committee, so we're not duplicating efforts, but if we can, and I'm gonna ask him to give us that on the next board meeting. And then, so we're all hearing it, so then we can decide if it works. If his plan is something that we think is gonna be viable and meet his expectations, then we will just keep the committee as something is, if anything changes, we'll establish that. And so we'll give Dennis the opportunity to tell us how he wants to attack this. Because Anthony's primary objective of it is transparency on
Yeah.
school safety. I don't know if we need a committee for transparency. We can have Dennis make sure that he's providing, if we need, every board meeting, hey, here's our top priorities in safety. This is how we're addressing it. And if that's sufficient for Anthony and the rest of the board, then, we can save a lot of time.
I think that she's a teacher at Palm Crop, I guess.
Yes, Monica.
Monica, yeah. She was the one that was talking, and I think it was more about not just safety, but just things that needed to be fixed or, dilapidations of the schools or trying to address,
Mhm.
the severities that we need to target this first and then put the other things on the back burner. And when it comes down to it, I agree with her 100%. I would like for her to be a part of that. She's the one that brought it to our attention. And if you're going to have something like that, I would like to invite her to be a part of that.
Part of,
Of a
I'm
committee.
sure she'll be, yeah, that's if we're gonna do a committee, all right?
Yeah, if you're going to do one, I think that she should be a part of that because that was her brainchild, and I think it's a good idea. But
But
also,
to your point, the transparency, if that's what I have heard and talked to her about in the past is the solutions. And today is part of those conversations is what now? We
Mhm.
don't have this money. We know that what our list is not being funded from the state. So what are the solutions? And so I think to the point, I don't think we need to create a committee to have a committee, but if there's a piece to say, hey, these are like how many orders or whatever, I don't know, what do they call them?
Oh, work orders.
Work orders. But then two, we realize that we might have to go out for a bond. What does that look like? What is the long-term plan for it? And maybe it's just about the communication of these conversations that will be suffice. But I think it's great to be able to include her in that conversation. Like, what would make you feel good about the board and the superintendent doing? And I think for her, she just felt like there was, okay, that didn't pass, but we still have this need. So what are we doing?
I think that some of those things, and include her in on that, maybe that part of the committee is, and I've been actively doing it already when I go on these school visits, and I ask the principals,
Mhm.
what do you need? What can we do for you? And start having the out of the box approach. Fundraisers, let's say for Shade for over at Raleigh. There's a gate or a fence over at Woodard on the south side of the parking lot that could be used. These little tiny things, instead of trying to throw that into a bond, why can't we fix those now? And let's do fundraisers. Let's find ways to outside of the box thoughts. They have PTOs. Raleigh has a PTO. I connected them with Elite Engraving so they could do these little brick wafers and try to raise funds to be able to pay for that shade.
Right.
Palmcroft
Do we
had
need
$120,000 shade that she got down to $43,000.
Right.
So I got that same contact, that same builder, and I gave her to Miss Angulo. And I said, look, this builder right here did it for 43. You're saying that yours is 80-something thousand. I would bet you bring this guy in and you fundraise, you could probably do, which is a smaller shade than Palmcroft, for 35. You know, let's start thinking as a board, or, you know, even just as an individual, I don't care if it's a board or not, this is just something I'm doing, is that we go out to the community and we try to get those fundraisers. We try to figure out ways to raise funds or even community builds, little build projects, to be able to put these little things together to get them off the plate so that we can concentrate on the bond on the bigger things. You know, these little, a fence here and a fence there and a shade here and a shade there, we shouldn't have to wait for a bond to be able to pay for those things.
No, I agree. And I think if we look at, and maybe one of our reports is overall maintenance, right? How many service orders, work orders do we have? How many are getting accomplished? Because I don't believe that when you're talking about a gate that might be broken, that's one item, right? But we're 1,500 work orders completed this week, and what were their priorities, right? Everything gets, I don't, Mr. Thomas Tomeo,
He's doing awesome.
you know, right. And so maybe we need to get that information to the board on, here's the work we're working on, here's our priority. It's getting done, or it's not getting done, or we look at it and ask, well, that seems awful important. But giving Dennis the opportunity to manage his team to accomplish our expectations, I think, is the first step.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I'd like to do. I don't think a committee at this time is where we need to be. We need to establish where we're at, see what good come of it, what are the changes, how we proceed forward, get a better understanding of how the maintenance system works on the repairs, service orders and things. Then if we see anything that the board needs to come in and say, okay, I think we need to change course on this aspect of it. But I think that list is going to feed into what you want to do. It's also going to help feed the bond, if there is a bond for that, because it's already something that the board is being versed on and we're getting monthly reports. Or if you find that reporting on the Friday report that, you know, here's a data sheet of information that we can scour through so you get cross-eyed. So we can see, well, it is, I mean, I can't believe for a second that with the number of schools we have, the maintenance size, the ages of the schools, that it isn't a substantial amount of maintenance being done, right? I mean, I've seen smaller facilities with a ton of maintenance, and everything has to be prioritized. And so how do we get that information so that we as a board can go back to our constituents and say, look, I understand you see a school that needs to be painted, but what you didn't see was the broken handrails, you didn't see the broken gates, you didn't see the falling down lights, you didn't see all these other things that are getting done. Now, I'm not saying those things are getting done, I'm not saying they're not, I'm just saying that we need to be more knowledgeable of those things so that when somebody comes back and tells us, man, it would really be nice if you painted that school. Yes, it really would. Would you like to champion a volunteer crew? No, you're too busy? We understand, right? I mean, we need to be able to have those conversations, but we need to know that information. The only way we're going to get it, I think, is if we task Dennis to somehow figure out how to educate us on how much maintenance is being done, how it's being prioritized, so that we can carry that message back.
Can that maybe be a part of the board meetings, that we have an update from
Yes.
Tomeo?
Right, that's part of what the conversation will be in the next board meeting. Is Anthony said, if Dennis can present a plan that provides the transparency that he's looking for in the information, he's all for that over a committee. And so I've already asked Dennis to start putting something together, and Anthony is on board with that. He says, yeah, that meets what I initially brought this up for an agenda item, was to open up transparency so that we can carry that message back out. And we have an understanding of what it is. And the more we understand it, if it comes time for a bond or an override or anything else that we have to do with the committee, we're fully versed on what's going on and the depth of that
Yeah.
problem.
No, I like that. And then I agree, we don't need a committee over a committee. And that's why when she first brought it up during an actual board meeting, I had a question. I said, well, isn't that Tomeo's department? But I do like the transparency. And if we could bring that to the board meetings, that we say, okay, this is what we've done for this month, or this is what's on the chopping block coming up, or, kind of do a public update. I think that would probably settle some of that.
Right.
But then I like the committee, if we can, and maybe I'm thinking of a committee in a different aspect, and get her involved. What's her name? Monica. Get Monica involved. That on these little crumb projects that I call it, the fence, the shade, these other smaller things that maybe we could do as a community, maybe she could be a part of that community build team to go out to the public and rally the troops, and let's do things. It's, whatever we got to do.
Right.
I don't mind doing a car wash once in a while. I mean, it's not going to make a lot of money, but
I'm
do
not
something.
gonna do that. I'll do any other fundraiser, but I have told my kids I'm not doing a car wash.
Yeah.
I got my boots in the ground. I'll do whatever it takes. I don't have deep pockets.
That
I
does
got
not make enough
stamps,
money.
so-
There you go. I like that statement. So, but yeah, so we'll continue the facilities committee task force in the next meeting. Anthony definitely wants to be a part of it, and the brief conversation I had with him, he's comfortable with, provided it's a lot of pressure for Dennis here to present a plan that we all accept.
He's got big shoulders.
Yeah.
But he's already involved in it because of the bond
Right.
from
Yeah.
last year, understanding all of the maintenance stuff. So, falls right into that,
You're the
picking
man.
that up.
I am for now, right?
Yeah.
No, I think we'll be good, yep.
Okay.
Ready or not.
Yeah, there we go.
Ready or not, and you too.
More faith in all of you.
My contract starts
got
in
this.
July, though.
Wait,
Well, this meeting isn't
We
until
got
July
that.
21st. We'll just push them all until July. So, but, okay. So that covers everything on there. One of the things that I did want to bring up is Mr. Sheldon did want to be here, but he had a prior, as most of you know, he had a
Oh,
prior
they are on the
obligation.
Jumbotron. He is chaperoning. I didn't realize who's chaperoning my kids' field trip. Well, there's two big buses.
Yeah.
They just got on the Jumbotron
Oh,
at
perfect.
the Diamondbacks game.
And I think that's a better retirement scenario for him than sitting in here and,
Well, I don't
we've
know
got
about a bunch of
Dennis.
6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Kylie told me this morning, our superintendent is here. I said, yeah, I told him to watch you.
Our personal security.
She's like, why is he coming? I was like, well, because he's retiring. He's helping. There's a bunch of you. There's 2 buses full of you. So I'm excited they got on and they went to ASU.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
They got to do both.
So it was a good one. So he was torn. He was going to be here, and I told him, I said, go have fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Last little bit of school here, so it was better for him to go there than to sit through his. He had a lot of history, but we'll have that history in the next board meeting.
Yeah.
So I don't think we are losing anything by his absence. All right. With that, if anybody has any other questions or anything, I'm going to end the meeting.
Nothing.
Meeting